Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight our chronicle covers the fractures in the reality of Tamriel, specifically the gaping logical chasms found in the province of Skyrim. We aren't just looking at the snow-capped peaks and the ancient ruins, we are peering into the abyss of narrative inconsistencies, those moments where the Elder Scrolls seem less like a divine prophecy and more like a hastily scribbled note on a tavern napkin. Picture yourself in the back of a cart, the smell of wet pine and horse sweat filling the air, the wooden wheels groaning against cobblestones that haven't been paved since the Second Era. The fog is thick, the mood is grim, and for some reason the physics engine of the universe is vibrating threateningly, threatening to launch your carriage into the stratosphere if it hits a stray butterfly. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Cold Harbour without some serious enchanted gear, and you certainly wouldn't survive the glitched-out intro sequence of a modded playthrough without a helmet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of Nirn. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wagon wheels trundle relentlessly forward, carrying us toward the first and perhaps most glaring oddity in the Dragonborn saga, the Helgen Ambush. It is the scene that launched a million memes, the awakening that defines a generation of adventurers. Hey you're finally awake! It's iconic, it's nostalgic, it is also a logistical nightmare that falls apart the moment you look at a map of Skyrim with a critical eye. Let us consider the geography. We are told, quite explicitly by Ralof, that the ambush took place at Darkwater Crossing. This is a small mining settlement located in the southern reaches of Eastmarch, deep in Stormcloak territory. It is a lush, geothermally active area where the river winds through the valley. This is where General Tullius, the military genius sent by the Emperor himself, finally sprung his trap and captured Ulfric's Stormcloak. It was a masterstroke of military intelligence and execution. So far, so good. But then we have the prisoner, you, the player, the theoretical hero of this tale. Ralof looks you in the eye and says, "You were trying to cross the border, right? Walked right into that Imperial ambush, same as us, and that thief over there." Here lies the rub. If the ambush was at Darkwater Crossing, deep in the interior of Skyrim, nowhere near the Cyrodiil border, how exactly did you walk into it while trying to cross said border? The border to Cyrodiil is at the Pale Pass, near Helgen and Falkreath, miles and miles to the southwest of Darkwater Crossing. For you to stumble into an ambush at Darkwater while trying to cross the border would be like trying to enter a house through the front door and accidentally ending up in the neighbour's backyard 3 streets over. It implies a level of navigational incompetence that is truly staggering for someone destined to save the world. Unless the Dragonborn's sense of direction is inherently cursed by Sheogorath, the geography simply does not add up. Fans still debate whether this was a simple writing oversight, a distinct possibility given the chaotic development of massive open-world games, or if crossing the border was a euphemism for being a vagrant in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some deeper theories suggest the Dragonborn was actually crossing the border from Morrowind into the Rift, which is closer to Darkwater, but the dialogue strongly implies the Cyrodiilic border, especially given the diverse races of the player character often hailing from the west or south. It remains a geographical puzzle piece that refuses to fit, a jagged edge in the smooth narrative of the opening. But let's move past the map and look at the capture itself. We are meant to believe that the last Dragonborn, a being with the soul of a dragon, a mortal capable of shouting reality into submission, was captured by a standard Imperial patrol. Now, granted, at this point in the timeline, the Dragonborn hasn't leveled up. They are effectively a nobody, but lore-wise the Dragonborn is a prisoner, capital P. In Elder Scrolls metaphysics, the prisoner is a cosmic constant, a being of immense potential unbound by fate. Yet this unbound variable was apparently knocked unconscious, stripped of their gear, and tossed into a wagon without putting up a fight worthy of a bard's song. It paints a picture of a rather unheroic beginning. 1 minute you are presumably minding your own business, perhaps picking mountain flowers or chasing a rabbit, and the next, you're bonked on the head by a nameless soldier. It's a humbling thought. The saviour of Nirn, the one who will eventually slap Daedric princes in the face, was taken down by the fantasy equivalent of a mall cop. And consider the company you keep in that wagon. Ulfric's Stormcloak, the Jarl of Windhelm, the leader of the rebellion, the man who shouted the High King into pieces, or so the legends say, is gagged and bound. Beside him is Ralof, a dedicated soldier, and Lakir of Rorikstead, a horse thief who regrets every life choice leading up to this moment. The Empire has captured the most high-value target in the entire province. General Tullius has won. The Civil War should be over. So, what does Tullius do? Does he execute Ulfric on the spot at Darkwater Crossing? No. Does he transport him to the Imperial City to face the Emperor's justice? A public trial that would cement the Empire's authority? No. He decides to cart him all the way to Helgen, a relatively minor outpost, to chop his head off in a courtyard that barely fits the gathered crowd. This decision is often cited as a necessity to avoid a rescue attempt or to bypass the Thalmor, specifically Elenwen, who we see arguing with Tullius at the gates of Helgen. The core in-game fact here is that the Thalmor actually want the war to continue. They don't want Ulfric dead yet because his rebellion drains the Empire's resources. Tullius, being a sharp tactician from Cyrodiil, likely knows this. He wants Ulfric dead now to stop the bleeding. That part makes sense. But the choice of Helgen, a wooden fort in the middle of dragon-prone mountains, feels like a setup for disaster, which of course it is. The sheer inefficiency of the execution process is also worth noting. The Imperials have a list. They love their lists. Forget the list, he goes to the block, the captain shouts when your name isn't found. This bureaucracy is the only thing moving faster than the plot. They are so eager to kill a nobody that they violate their own protocols. It highlights a strange plot hole in the Empire's competency. They are competent enough to capture a Master of the Voice and a prophesied hero in one swoop, but incompetent enough to execute a random prisoner without identification just because it's almost lunchtime. Furthermore, let's talk about Lokir of Rorikstead. The poor man prays to the divines, Akatosh, Arche, Kinnereth, pleading for help, and what happens? He makes a run for it and gets filled with arrows. The gods were apparently on a coffee break, or perhaps they knew what was coming over the mountain peaks. Lokir serves as the tutorial for don't run from guards, but his presence implies a lack of security that contradicts the high-value nature of the convoy. If this wagon contains the leader of the Stormcloak Rebellion, why is a petty horse thief thrown in with him? Surely Ulfric warrants a solitary transport, or at least a wagon filled exclusively with high-ranking Stormcloaks. Throwing a horse thief and a random border crosser in with the most dangerous man in Skyrim feels like a security breach waiting to happen. It's as if the Secret Service arrested a jaywalker and threw them in the back of the presidential limousine because they were running low on handcuffs. And then there is the arrival of Alduin, the World Eater, the firstborn of Akatosh. He bursts through the clouds, descending upon Helgen like a calamity made of scales and fire. It is a spectacle of destruction. But why Helgen? Why now? There is an obscure lore tidbit that suggests the dragons have a unique sensitivity to the flow of time and the presence of a dragonborn soul. Some posit that Alduin wasn't there for Ulfric. He was there for you. He sensed a rival Dova soul, a threat to his dominance, and came to snuff it out. Yet, if that is the case, Alduin does a terrible job. He shouts down the wall, kills a few guards, burns some houses, and generally causes chaos. But he never focuses his fire on the one person who actually matters. He acts more like a force of nature than a sentient, intelligent being who ruled humanity in the Merethic era. If Alduin had simply landed in the courtyard and bathed the execution block in fire immediately, the game would be over. The prophecy would be broken. Instead, he lands on a tower, roars a bit, knocks over some stones, and gives the Dragonborn ample time to escape through the keep. It is the classic villain blunder, choosing theatrics over efficiency. For a dragon who supposedly devoured the world in previous Kalpus, his target prioritization is woefully lacking. He creates the very chaos that allows his only predator to escape. The entire sequence at Helgen relies on a cascade of coincidences that border on the absurd. You have to be caught at the wrong place, geographically impossible, thrown in the wrong wagon, security protocol failure, sentenced to death without identity, bureaucratic laziness, and then saved by the literal apocalypse arriving at the exact second the headsman's axe is raised. It is a thrilling opening, undeniably. It sets the stakes. But when you lie in bed at night and trace the lines of logic, the threads begin to fray. The Empire's competence oscillates wildly between genius and idiocy. The geography warps to fit the narrative, and the ancient dragon gods seem to suffer from poor aim, but we survive. We tumble through the burning wreckage, past the tortured screams of stormcloaks and Imperials alike, and emerge into the caves beneath the keep. We grab a sword or an axe, finally taking agency in a world that just tried very hard to delete us. We step out of that cave and see the Bleak Falls Barrow looming in the distance, promising adventure. We forgive the plot holes because the music swells and the world opens up vast and beautiful. Yet, as we walk down the path to Riverwood, ignoring the fact that we should probably be dead 10 times over, we have to wonder, if the beginning was this messy, what else in this province doesn't make sense? The answer, as we will soon see, is almost everything. From the magical institutions to the political machinations, Skyrim is a land held together by duct tape and dragon shouts. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the frozen northern reaches, where a certain college claims to teach magic, yet seems to have forgotten the definition of the word curriculum. Leaving the chaotic, dragon-scorched introduction of Helgen behind, we travel north, far north, past the sprawling plains of Whiterun, through the snowy passes where the wind bites exposed skin like a skeever, until we reach the crumbling cliffs of Winterhold. Here sits the College of Winterhold, the premier institution for magical study in Skyrim. It is a place of wonder, mystery, and an administrative structure so baffling it makes the Jarl's courts look like paragons of efficiency. We are here to discuss the college's low standards, or more accurately, how a wandering vagrant with a rusty iron mace and 0 magical aptitude can become the archmage in the span of a long weekend. Picture the scene. You approach the bridge, a precarious, crumbling stone archway that looks like it's held together by frozen spit and prayer. Feralda, the gatekeeper, stops you. "None may pass," she says, her voice echoing over the howling wind, "unless they prove their worth." This is the entrance exam, the barrier to entry for the Harvard of Tamriel. She asks you to cast a spell, maybe a fear spell or a firebolt. If you are a mage, this is trivial. But let's say you are a Nord warrior named Bjorn the Brick Thrower. You have never cast a spell in your life. Your mana pool is the default size. Do you fail? Do you get turned away to study your primers? No. Feralda simply sighs and says, "Here, I can teach it to you for 30 gold. It is the equivalent of showing up to a medical school interview, admitting you don't know what a spleen is, and the dean selling you a pamphlet on anatomy for $5 before handing you a scalpel. The bar is on the floor. In fact, if your speechcraft is high enough, you can just persuade her that you are Dragonborn and shout at the ground. Good enough, she says. Welcome to the faculty. Once inside, you meet Tolfdir, the Master of Alteration. He is a kindly old wizard, the grandfatherly type who probably has Werther's originals in his robe pockets. He starts the first class in the Hall of Elements. The other students, Brelina, Onmund, Jazago, are nervous. They have prepared for this. They come from families of mages or have travelled great distances. Tolfdir begins a lecture on safety. Magic is dangerous, he warns. We must be careful. Core in-game. Fact. This safety lecture lasts approximately 45 seconds before Tolfdir asks you to stand in front of him and cast a ward while he flings fireballs at your face. This is the curriculum. Day 1. Safety talk. Day 1, Minute 2. Live combat exercise. Immediately after this single lesson, Tolfdir decides the classroom is too stuffy and takes the entire class on a field trip to Sarthal, an ancient Nordic ruin filled with undead Draugr. This is where the college aspect completely dissolves. You aren't a student, you're a heavily armed janitor clearing out crypts while the professors stand back and take notes. Deep within Sarthal, you find the Eye of Magnus, a massive, swirling orb of magical energy that hums with a power capable of unmaking the world. Now, a rational institution would cordon off the area, call in the Psijic order immediately, or perhaps just bury it again. Instead, they decide to haul this volatile cosmic battery back to the dorms. This leads to the arrival of Ancano, a Thalmor agent whose smugness is only rivaled by his incompetence. He wants the eye, the college wants the eye, and you, the student who's been enrolled for roughly 3 hours, are tasked with finding the Staff of Magnus to control it. Here is where the obscure lore tidbit comes in. To get the staff, you must navigate Labyrinthian, This is not just a dungeon, it is the testing ground of Shalidor, the legendary archmage of the First Era. Deep inside, you encounter the spectral remains of Savos Aran's old adventuring party. You learn that Savos, the current archmage, sacrificed his friends to bind a dragon priest named Morake just to survive. It paints a picture of the cost of magic, the sacrifices made for power. It's a dark, gritty piece of storytelling found in the Ghost's dialogue. It suggests that becoming archmage requires immense sacrifice, wisdom, and perhaps a bit of ruthlessness. So how does the game reflect this? You kill Morake, grab the stick, and run back to Winterhold. When you return, Ancano has predictably gone rogue. He is channeling the Eye of Magnus, creating a magical anomaly that threatens to blow up the college. Savos Aran, the current archmage, confronts him and is promptly blasted into oblivion. He dies instantly. Mirabelle Irvine, the master wizard and second in command, stays behind to hold the barrier. She also dies. You, the freshman, charge in. You use the Staff of Magnus to drain the Eye's power, then you hit Ancano with whatever weapon you have until he stops twitching. The threat is neutralized. The dust settles. Tolfdir, the man who has studied magic for decades. The man who taught you your first ward looks at you. He looks at the robes of the Archmage, and he says, "I think you should have these." Excuse me? There are master wizards at this college. Feralda destroys enemies with lightning storms. Finis Gestor summons Daedra from oblivion. Colette Morantz restores broken bodies. Tolfdir can paralyze entire groups of bandits. You? You might be a stealth archer who hasn't cast a spell since the entrance exam. You might be a barbarian who thinks restoration is a valid school of magic only because it heals bruises. Yet, because you found the stick and hit the elf, you are now the academic and administrative leader of the most prestigious magical institution in Skyrim. The logic here is non-existent. It would be like a first-year biology student saving the lab from a fire and immediately being named Dean of Medicine and Chief of Surgery. The administrative workload alone should be terrifying. As Archmage, you should be organising lectures, managing the library's budget with your Agroshub, and dealing with the Jarl's complaints about magical pollution. Instead, the game gives you a nice set of quarters, a garden of ingredients, and absolute freedom to leave and never return. The Archmage is essentially an absentee landlord. Fans have long debated this rapid promotion. A popular theory, often discussed in the deep lore threads, is that the title of Archmage is actually a curse, or a position no one else wants. Look at the history. The previous Archmage, Savos, was haunted by his past failures. The Augur of Dunlane. A former student is fused to the floor in the midden. The position seems to attract death and disaster. Perhaps Tolfdir and the others are smart. They see the Dragonborn, this glowing, shouting demigod of violence, and think, let's make them the target. I just want to research Dwemercogs in peace. It is a theory of weaponized bureaucracy. Or perhaps it speaks to the desperation of the college itself. Winterhold is a shadow of its former self. Half the city fell into the sea in the Great Collapse. The locals hate the mages. The Synod and the College of Whispers in Cyrodiil are political messes. The College of Winterhold is independent, isolated, and dying. Maybe they simply cannot afford to be picky. When a figure of legend walks in, resolves a crisis involving an artifact that could rewrite history, and survives a fight with a Thalmor Justicia empowered by a god battery, you don't ask to see their transcripts. You give them the keys and hope they don't burn the place down. But the gameplay dissonance remains hilarious. You can walk around the college as Archmage wearing heavy Daedric armour, carrying a two-handed warhammer, and students will still ask you, "What do you think we should focus on, Archmage?" And your options are usually vague platitudes. You're a fraud, a magical imposter, and everyone just goes along with it. Even the Psijic Order, those mysterious monks who freeze time and speak in riddles, seem to endorse this madness. They appear to you, and only you, urging you to act. They take the Eye of Magnus away at the end, saying the world isn't ready for it. But they leave the college in your hands, the Psijics, who supposedly watch over the balance of magic in Mundus, are apparently fine with a novice destruction mage running the show. It implies that either they know something about your destiny that justifies the incompetence, or they simply don't care about the administrative quality of a Nordic trade school. The College of Winterhold questline is a power fantasy stripped of its logic. It condenses a lifetime of study into a fetch quest. It devalues the very concept of mastery by rewarding it to the person who just happened to be in the room when the boss died. As you stand on top of the college, looking out over the sea of ghosts, wearing robes that offer magicka regeneration you don't need, you have to chuckle. You're the Archmage. You can't cast an expert-level spell to save your life, but you have the quarters. And in Skyrim, possession is 9/10 of the law. But while the mages are handing out degrees like flyers, there are other organisations in Skyrim with even more questionable decision-making processes. We leave the frosty absurdities of the college and turn our attention to the mountains near Riverwood, where a secret society of dragon hunters has decided that the best way to save the world is to alienate the only person capable of doing it. We descend from the icy absurdity of Winterhold, shaking the frost from our cloaks, and travel southwest to the craggy, mist-shrouded peaks of the Reach. Here, carved into the side of a mountain like a jagged scar, lies Skyhaven Temple. It is the ancient headquarters of the Blades, a fortress of stone faces and forgotten oaths, and inside this dusty hall stands Delphine, a woman whose strategic acumen is rivaled only by a mud crab walking sideways into a campfire. We have arrived at perhaps the most infuriating narrative dead end in the entire game, Delphine's ultimatum. To understand why this is a plot hole, and not just a difficult moral choice, we have to look at the stakes. Alduin, the World Eater, is loose. He is resurrecting dragons daily. The souls of the dead are being devoured in Sovngarde. The literal end of time is knocking on the door. To stop him, the Dragonborn needs knowledge. Specifically, the Dragonren shout, a concept so hateful to dragons that they cannot comprehend it without experiencing mortality. The only being in existence willing and able to teach you how to retrieve this knowledge is Paarthurnax, the leader of the Greybeards. Paarthurnax is a dragon. He is Alduin's younger brother. In the ancient Merethic era, he served as Alduin's lieutenant, committing atrocities that would make a Dremora blush. This is undeniable. However, he also betrayed Alduin. He taught the ancient Nords, Gormleth, Feldir and Hakon, how to use the voice. Without Paarthurnax, humanity would still be enslaved or extinct. For thousands of years since, he has lived in isolation at the throat of the world. Des Spei. Meditating on the way of the voice to suppress his innate dominate or die instincts. Enter Delphine. She is one of the last remaining members of the Blades, an organisation that has been hunted to near extinction by the Thalmor. She finds the Dragonborn, guides them to Skyhaven Temple, and helps decipher the prophecy. So far, she is a useful, if somewhat abrasive, ally. But then, the plot hole opens its maw. Once Delphine realises that the leader of the Greybeards is a dragon, she refuses to offer any further assistance until you kill him. He must die, she says, effectively crossing her arms and pouting while the apocalypse looms overhead. Let's break down the sheer insanity of this demand. First, consider the chain of command. An in-game fact that is drilled into us from the moment we meet the Greybeards is that the Blades were originally the Akaviri Dragon Guard. They swore an oath to serve the Dragonborn, not the other way around. The Dragonborn is the Emperor figure, the ultimate authority in their order. Delphine acknowledges this. She calls you Dragonborn. She admits the Blades exist to guide and guard you. Yet, when you, the messianic figure she has sworn her life to, decide that keeping Paarthurnax alive is strategically sound, she essentially says, "You're fired." She attempts to pull rank on her own boss. It is the equivalent of a Secret Service agent telling the president, "I'm not opening the bunker door until you shoot your dog. I don't care if the nukes are flying." It breaks the fundamental law of what the Blades are. If they serve the Dragonborn, they must respect the Dragonborn's judgment, especially when that judgment involves not murdering the only ally who knows how to defeat the current threat. Second, the timing is suicidal. Delphine issues this ultimatum before Alduin is defeated. She is willing to sever ties with the only person capable of saving the world because of a grudge held against a dragon who has been peaceful for eras. She prioritizes ancient justice over immediate survival. If the Dragonborn refuses, the Blades withdraw all support. They won't help you hunt dragons. They won't offer potion ingredients. They won't even let you hire recruits. They would seemingly rather let Alduin eat the world than work with a dragon sympathizer. This brings us to the philosophical cavern where the writing collapses. Paarthurnax poses the question that defines his character. What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort? It is a profound meditation on free will and redemption. Delphine's counter-argument is remarkably shallow. He's a dragon. Dragons are bad. Kill it. There is a lore that makes her stance even more baffling. The Akaviri Dragon Guard, the precursors to the Blades, didn't just kill dragons, they sought to consume their power and knowledge. But more importantly, the Blades served the Septim Emperors for centuries. Many of those emperors, specifically Tiber Septim, Talos, famously worked with dragons. Tiber Septim had a dragon ally named Nephael Elagus. If the Blades are the guardians of the Septim legacy, and the Septims employed dragons as war assets, why is Delphine so dogmatic about extinction? Her no-exceptions rule contradicts the very history she claims to uphold. She isn't acting like a Blade, she's acting like a rogue fanatic who hasn't read her own order's handbook. The community reaction to this plot hole is arguably the strongest of any in the game. Fans don't just debate this, they mod it out of existence. The Paarthurnax dilemma is one of the most downloaded mods in Skyrim's history, specifically because the base game offers no logical rebuttal. In the vanilla game, you cannot tell Delphine, "I am the Dragonborn, I outrank you, stand down." You either kill the monk dragon, or you have an uncompleted quest in your journal forever. There is a prevalent fan theory that Delphine is actually the villain of the Blade's story, or perhaps an unwitting agent of chaos. Some suggest she represents the degradation of the Order, that the Blades have forgotten their purpose as guardians and have reverted to their primal Akaviri roots as mindless slayers. Others argue she's simply incompetent, a spy who lived in hiding for so long she developed a paranoia that overrides logic. She sees a dragon, she sees a threat, she cannot comprehend nuance, and look at the alternative she offers. If you kill Paarthurnax, what do you gain? The ability to recruit 3 followers into the Blades to go dragon hunting. That's it. You trade the wisdom of the ages, the meditation bonuses to your shouts, and the moral high ground for a generic Radiant quest to kill lizards with 3 random NPCs. The reward is mechanically inferior to the punishment, which is rare in game design. It feels like the developers intended for this to be a grey moral choice but forgot to balance the scales. Furthermore, consider the Greybeards. If you kill Paarthurnax, Arngir and the other monks exile you. They shout you off the mountain. You lose the location of word walls. You lose the meditation bonuses. Strategically, the Greybeards are far more valuable than the Blades. The Blades in Skyrim are 2 people in a cave, Delphine and Esbern. Esbern is a brilliant scholar, but he follows Delphine's lead. The Greybeards are masters of the voice. Why would anyone, let alone a hero trying to save the world, choose the 2 people living in a damp temple over the masters of the Thuum? The conflict reaches its peak absurdity during the season-unending quest, the Peace Council at High Hrothgar. Delphine insists on being there. She sits at the table with Ulfric, Tullius and Elenwen. She demands to be heard, and yet she has no political power. She's a relic. The fact that the Jarls and the generals listen to her demands is strange enough, but the fact that she uses this platform to glare at the Greybeards rather than focus on the imminent dragon threat highlights her misplaced priorities. She's fighting a war that ended in the First Era. Even the dialogue options reflect the plot hole. You can ask Paarthurnax about his past and he is open, repentant and wise. You ask Delphine about her reasoning and she gives you circular logic. Dragons kill people. He is a dragon. Therefore, he must die. It ignores the reality that you are part dragon. It ignores that Odahviing eventually serves you. It ignores the complexity of the world the Elder Scrolls usually champions. So, we leave Skyhaven Temple with a bitter taste in our mouths. We leave Delphine to her maps and her bitterness. Most of us choose to let the quest rot in our log. We fly back to the throat of the world, sit next to the old dragon and look out over the tundra. We realise that the true test of the Dragonborn wasn't defeating Alduin, it was tolerating the middle management of the Blades. But as we look down from the mountain, scanning the horizon, we spot something else that doesn't quite sit right. We see Thalmor justiciars patrolling the roads, dragging prisoners in chains. We remember the White Gold Concordat, the treaty that supposedly ended the Great War, and we realise that the political landscape of Skyrim is just as broken as Delphine's moral compass. We step away from the dizzying heights of High Hrothgar and the strategic blunders of the Blades, descending into the lush green forests of Falkreath, or perhaps the golden autumn woods of the Rift. The roads of Skyrim are generally peaceful, save for the occasional wolf or bandit demanding a toll they can't enforce. But then you see them. 3 figures in shimmering, sleek elven armour, marching with a synchronization that screams, "We are better than you." Between them stumbles a ragged Nord, hands bound, head low. This brings us to the Thalmor Justiciars and the gaping logical wound known as the unchecked roaming. We must first understand the legal framework here. The White Gold Concordat is the treaty that ended the Great War between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion. It is a humiliating document for the Empire, certainly. Its primary stipulations were the banning of Talos worship and the disbanding of the Blades. This is the core in-game fact that drives the entire Civil War narrative. The Empire signed it to survive. The Stormcloaks fight to tear it up. However, there is a massive leap in logic between banning a religion and allowing foreign death squads to roam the countryside kidnapping citizens without oversight. Consider the jurisdiction. Skyrim is still a province of the Empire. It has Jarls, it has holds, and it has laws. Even in a client state or an occupied territory there are protocols. Yet, the Thalmor Justiciars operate with a level of autonomy that makes the actual rulers of Skyrim look like figureheads. They don't just investigate claims of heresy, they actively abduct people from their homes, drag them along public roads, and imprison them in black sites like Northwatch Keep without a trial. Imagine a Jarl. Let's take Bulgraf, the Greater of Whiterun. He's a proud man, a traditionalist who values his people's independence. He's officially neutral for most of the game. Yet Thalmor patrols walk through his hold, kidnapping his subjects, and he does nothing. The guards, who will shoot you for stealing a sweet roll, watch a foreign military unit drag a screaming local away and simply say, "No lollygagging." It defies all political reality. If the Empire wants to maintain legitimacy and prevent more Nords from joining Ulfric's rebellion, they should be doing everything possible to minimise the Thalmor's visibility. Tullius knows this. He hates the Thalmor. He complains about them constantly. And yet he allows Elenwen, the first emissary, years to host lavish parties in the foothills of Solitude, while her subordinates torture Imperial citizens a few miles down the road. The existence of Northwatch Keep is the crowning jewel of this absurdity. This is a fortress on the coast of Haefengar, the hold loyal to the Empire. It is entirely staffed by Thalmor. It is a foreign prison on sovereign soil where Nords are tortured to death. The fact that the High King, or his widow Elisif, allows a foreign power to operate a torture dungeon within walking distance of the Blue Palace is baffling. It would be like a country allowing a hostile rival nation to set up a kidnapping centre in their suburbs and just shrugging it off as diplomacy. There is an obscure law found in the Thalmor dossier, Ulfric's Stormcloak. It reveals that the Thalmor actually view Ulfric as an asset, uncooperative and dormant, because his rebellion weakens the Empire. They want the war to continue. If that is their goal, why are they so aggressive on the roads? Their brutal, open kidnapping of Nords is the single biggest recruitment tool for the Stormcloaks. Every time a Justiciar sneers at a Nord and drags their brother away, Ulfric gets another soldier. If the Thalmor were the master manipulators the law claims them to be, they would be subtle. They would operate in the shadows, letting the Nords fight the Empire without giving them a common enemy to rally against. Instead, they make themselves the most hateable, visible targets in the province. It's almost as if the Thalmor's eye package forgot they are supposed to be Cold War spies and defaulted to generic bandit behaviour but with better armour. And let's talk about the player's interaction with them. You are the Dragonborn. You might be the Thane of the very hold you are walking in. A Justiciar stops you. Do you believe in Talos, they ask? If you say yes, they attack you instantly, on a public road, in broad daylight. It is an immediate extrajudicial execution attempt of a high-ranking local noble by a foreign diplomat. And the game treats this as normal. If you defend yourself and kill them, you don't spark an international incident. Elenwen doesn't demand your head. The Empire doesn't arrest you for breaking the treaty. You just loot their glass armour and move on. The Thalmor are treated less like a diplomatic faction, and more like high-level mobs that spawn in the wilderness. The political weight of killing a Justiciar should be immense, yet it has zero consequences. Fans have long debated the Tower Theory, the idea that the Thalmor's ultimate goal is to deactivate the metaphysical towers, like the throat of the world, to unmake reality and return to the dawn of time. This would explain their fanaticism. They don't care about politics, they care about metaphysics. But even if they want to unmake the world, their methods in Skyrim are stunningly inefficient. Alienating the local population to the point of armed insurrection makes their job harder, not easier. There is also the matter of Ondolamar, the Thalmor agent in Markarth. He is arguably the only smart Thalmor in the game. He stays in the Jarl's palace, he manipulates the Jarl into doing his dirty work, and he employs you to find evidence of Talos worship so he can make a legal arrest. He follows the rules of the occupation. He's effective. He proves that the writers knew how this political dynamic should work. So why is every other justiciar in the wilderness acting like a murder hobo? The disconnect creates a jarring experience. On one hand, we are told the Empire is the only thing keeping the Dominion out of Skyrim. On the other hand, the Dominion is already here, kidnapping people, and the Empire is acting as their doorman. It validates the Stormcloak cause completely. When Galmar Stonefist says the Empire is a puppet of the Thalmor, he isn't using propaganda. He is describing the literal gameplay loop where Imperial guards watch Thalmor execute civilians. If the writers wanted to show a nuanced occupation, they would have shown Imperial patrols arguing with Thalmor patrols. They would have shown Jarls reluctantly handing over prisoners while cursing under their breath. Instead, we get a binary state. Either the Thalmor are killing you, or they are walking past you. The complexity of the Cold War setting is reduced to a random encounter table, and it gets worse when you consider the Civil War questline itself. If you side with the Empire and win, the Thalmor are still there. You just crush the rebellion that was fighting them, and in return, the Justiciars keep patrolling. The victory for the Empire doesn't seem to involve renegotiating the terms of the Thalmor's presence, and you essentially solidify the status quo of kidnapping and torture. As we stand on the road, watching the Justiciars disappear around the bend with their prisoner, we feel a sense of powerlessness, not because the enemy is strong, but because the world's logic is weak. We want to intervene, to shout them apart, but we know that 5 minutes later, another patrol will spawn, and the guards will still do nothing. The sun sets over the Solitude Arch, casting long shadows over the marsh. The Thalmor continue their illogical crusade, proving that in Skyrim, diplomatic immunity is just a fancy word for bad AI scripting. But while the elves are busy failing at subtlety, there is a far greater threat looming in the skies, a threat that, by all rights, should have destroyed the world weeks ago. We speak, of course, of the World Eater himself. The dragon who seems to have forgotten that his job description includes eating the world. Leaving the Thalmor to their nonsensical patrols and diplomatic immunity, we turn our eyes upward. The skies of Skyrim are vast, painted with auroras and moons that seem close enough to touch. But blocking out the stars is a shadow, a winged silhouette that brings terror to every hold. We are talking about Alduin, the firstborn of Akatosh, the bane of kings, and the ancient dragon who ruled the world in the Merethic era. His title is the World Eater. It is a moniker that implies a singular, terrifying purpose, the consumption of reality itself. And yet, for a cosmic entity whose job description is literally end the current timeline, Alduin suffers from the most severe case of procrastination in the history of video game villains. Let's look at the urgency the game tries to sell us. The Greybeards summon you, the Jarls are panicked. The prophecy says the wheel turns upon the last Dragonborn. You are told that Alduin has returned to devour the world. If you take this literally, every second you spend crafting iron daggers or picking Nirnroot is a second closer to total annihilation. But if you actually follow Alduin around, you realise his schedule is surprisingly open. The first time we see him work is at Kynesgrove. Delphine, in her infinite wisdom, has deciphered the Dragonstone map. She realises dragons are coming back to life from specific burial mounds. You rush to Kynesgrove, expecting a cataclysm. Instead, you find Alduin hovering over a mound, shouting at a pile of dirt. Core in-game. Fact. Alduin uses the shout Slentid Vo to resurrect Sarlochnir. It is a slow, majestic process. The skin reforms, the muscles knit, the soul returns. It is visually stunning, but tactically, it is baffling. Alduin is a god. He's invulnerable to everything except a specific shout created by ancient Nords to force him to experience mortality. At the start of the game, nobody knows this shout. The Dragonborn doesn't have it. The Greybeards don't teach it. The Blades don't know it. Alduin is, for all intents and purposes, invincible. He could fly to Solitude, burn the Blue Palace, eat the High King, again, then fly to Windhelm and do the same to Ulfric. He could dismantle the Civil War in an afternoon. He could fly to the College of Winterhold and eat the Eye of Magnus for a snack. Instead, he spends his precious time playing middle manager. He flies from mound to mound, personally resurrecting his old lieutenants one by one. It's like a CEO insisting on personally onboarding every single intern while the company building is on fire. Why does he need Saloknir? Why does he need Vinteruth? He is the World Eater. He doesn't need an army. He is the army. This behaviour points to a fundamental confusion in Alduin's motivation. Is he here to eat the world, or is he here to rule it? There is an obscure lore tidbit that sheds some light on this, though it only deepens the plot hole of his World Eater title. In the Nord creation myths and the deeper metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls, the world goes through cycles called kalpas. The end of a kalpa is marked by Alduin eating the world so it can be reborn. This is his divine function. He is the reset button. However, during the Dragon War of the Merethic era, Alduin decided he liked being a king better than being a cosmic janitor. He forsook his duty to eat the world and instead chose to dominate it. This leads to the prevailing fan theory. Alduin isn't actually trying to eat the world in Skyrim. He is trying to reconquer it. He wants to reinstate the dragon cult. He wants to be worshipped again. This explains why he is resurrecting dragons. He needs enforcers to police the mortals. But if this is true, why does everyone call him the World Eater? Why does the prophecy say the world will end? The game never clarifies if we are stopping the apocalypse or just a really bad regime change. Even if his goal is conquest, his strategy is flawed. He ignores the Dragonborn, the only threat to his rule, repeatedly. At Helgen, he flies off. At Kynesgrove, he shouts a bit of mockery and flies off, leaving Saloknir to do the dirty work. At the throat of the world, after you defeat him and he realizes you know Dragonrend, he flies off again. For a being of infinite pride, he runs away a lot, and then there is Sovngarde. Halfway through the main quest, we learn that Alduin has set up a portal to the Nord afterlife at Skuldafn. He is going there to devour the souls of the honoured dead. This is described as his way of gaining strength. He eats souls to recover his power. Think about this. He has access to an unlimited buffet of souls. He's essentially sitting in the pantry of the gods, gorging himself. Yet, the world is still here. Why doesn't he just finish the meal? If he eats all the souls in Sovngarde, does he get big enough to eat Nirn? We don't know, because he seems content to snack. He isn't the World Eater. He's the World Nibbler. The sheer logistics of his plan are also questionable. To reach Sovngarde, he has to fly to Skuldafn, a temple high in the Velothi Mountains, which is only accessible by flight. He has a priest there, Nakreen, guarding the portal. This implies a level of organisation and infrastructure that contradicts his chaotic nature. He has a base of operations, he has a gatekeeper, he has a supply line of souls, he is running a logistical operation, not an apocalypse, and let's look at the threat level. In the gameplay, random blood dragons or elder dragons you meet in the wild are often harder to kill than Alduin himself. When you finally confront him in Sovngarde, surrounded by the heroes of old, Gormlith Goldenhilt, Hakon One-Eye and Feldir the Old, the fight is whelming. Just whelming. He flies around, calls down some meteors and shouts. You shout Dragonrend. He lands. You hit him. Repeat 3 times. The World Eater, the end of all things, goes down faster than a snowy sabercat on legendary difficulty. The pacing of his apocalypse is entirely dependent on the player's whims. You can leave Alduin waiting in the mists of Sovngarde for 3 in-game years, while you build a house near Falkreath, adopt 2 children, and become the master of the Thieves' Guild. He never escalates. He never destroys a city to force your hand. He never eats the moon. He just waits. He is the most polite apocalypse imaginable. Compare this to the Oblivion Crisis. Mehrunes Dagon was invading. Gates were opening everywhere. The city of Kvatch was destroyed before the game even really started. There was a sense that the enemy was active and advancing. In Skyrim, the dragons are just around. They burn a few guards, maybe kill a chicken, and that's it. Alduin's return feels less like the end of days and more like a pest infestation. Oh, the dragons are back? Better call the Dovahkiin. He has the spray. There is a disconnect between the lore, Alduin is a fundamental force of the universe, and the gameplay. Alduin is a big black dragon with a larger health bar. The writers wanted the stakes of a cosmic reset, but the mechanics of an open-world RPG require the villain to be static until the player is ready. This results in the procrastination problem. Alduin has the power to win instantly. He chooses not to. He chooses to resurrect weak allies. He chooses to ignore his only threat. He chooses to eat souls slowly rather than devouring the reality that contains them. He is the architect of his own demise, not because of hubris, but because of inefficiency. It makes you wonder if Akatosh, the dragon god of time, looked down at his firstborn and thought, "This is embarrassing. He's been down there for weeks and he hasn't even eaten one continent. I need to send a Dragonborn to fire him." So we defeat Alduin. We shout him apart in the mists of the afterlife. His soul is not absorbed by us, a final tease, but goes up, presumably returning to Akatosh. The threat is ended, the World Eater is gone, and yet the dragons remain. Paarthurnax takes over, unless you listen to Delphine, in which case shame on you. The cycle continues, but as we leave the metaphysical realm of Sovngarde and return to the mortal plane, landing back on the snowy peak of the throat of the world, we are reminded that dragons aren't the only ones with security issues. While Alduin failed to protect his own soul from a mortal, there is another high-value target in Skyrim who seems to have forgotten the basic principles of bodyguarding. We travel now to the Solitude Inlet, where a massive ship called the Kataria is anchored. On board is the Emperor of Tamriel, Titus Mede II, and as we shall see, his protection detail is about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. We leave the misty peaks where dragons fall and descend to the icy waters of the Harfinger coast. Floating in the inlet near Solitude is the Kataria, the personal flagship of Titus Mede II, the Emperor of Tamriel. It is a vessel of immense majesty, a floating fortress of wood and gold, and guarding it are the Penitus Oculatus, the elite Imperial bodyguard unit that replaced the Blades after the Great War. Their name translates roughly to Inner Eye, implying they see everything. Unfortunately, based on their performance in Skyrim, they might want to consider a visit to an optometrist. This brings us to the baffling case of the Emperor's lax security detail. To understand the magnitude of this failure, we have to look at the context. The Dark Brotherhood, the most feared guild of assassins in history, has been systematically dismantling the Emperor's security network. They killed the Emperor's cousin, Vittoria Vici, at her own wedding in Solitude. They killed the Emperor's chef, the Gourmet, and impersonated him to poison a decoy emperor in the Castle Dower Tower. The Penitus Oculatus knows the Brotherhood is active. In fact, Commander Mauro, the head of the security detail, successfully baits the Brotherhood into a trap, destroys their sanctuary in Falkreath, and believes he has crushed them. So, having just survived an assassination attempt via soup, and having burned down the assassin's clubhouse, what does the Emperor do? Does he return to the heavily fortified Imperial city? Does he surround himself with a legion of battle mages? No. He decides to stay in Skyrim, a province currently torn apart by a civil war and infested with dragons, and he waits on a boat. A boat that is anchored far enough from the docks to be inconvenient, but close enough to swim to. The infiltration of the Kataria is almost insultingly easy. Core in-game. Fact. To board the ship, you don't need to use powerful illusion magic or disguise yourself as a crew member. You swim out to the anchor chain and climb up. That's it. The elite guard of the Emperor apparently forgot to pull up the anchor or post a single guard to watch the waterline. It is the video game equivalent of leaving the back door unlocked because you live in a safe neighbourhood, except the neighbourhood is Skyrim, and your neighbour is a Daedric prince. Once on board, the security measures are laughable. The sailors and Penitus Oculatus agents attack on sight. Sure, but they are spaced out in a way that allows you to pick them off one by one. There are no magical wards on the doors. There are no alarm spells. There are no detection circles. For a world where magic is commonplace, the Emperor's security relies entirely on dudes with swords standing in hallways. Where are the court wizards? Where are the healers? Where is the magical detection? Compare this to the obscure lore regarding the Penitus Oculatus in the novels The Infernal City and Lord of Souls. In those books, the Oculatus are described as ruthless, highly trained spies and mage hunters who are arguably more dangerous than the Blades because they lack the moral compass. They are efficient killers. In Skyrim, they are essentially city guards with better armour and worse pathfinding. They allow a single assassin, who they think is dead, to wipe out the entire crew of the flagship. And then we reach the Emperor's quarters. You pick a master-level lock, or steal the key from a guard, and there he is. Titus Mede II. He's sitting at his desk, looking out the window, seemingly waiting for you. There are no guards in the room. No elite bodyguards standing in the shadows. Just an old man in a robe. His reaction is the most interesting part of this absurdity. He doesn't scream. He doesn't call for help. He doesn't try to fight. He simply says, "We've been expecting you." He accepts his death with a stoicism that is both admirable and suspicious. He asks for one final request, that you kill the man who hired you, Amand Motier. This leads to the prevailing fan theory that attempts to plug this massive plot hole. The Emperor ordered the hit on himself. Think about it. Titus Mede II is an unpopular ruler. He signed the White Gold Concordat. He is seen as weak by the Nords and a puppet by the Thalmor. Perhaps he realised that as long as he lives, the Empire cannot unite. By dying, he becomes a martyr. By having the Dark Brotherhood do it, he avoids a political coup that could shatter the Empire further. It explains why the security was so lax. It explains why he was waiting. It explains why he wants Motieri dead, to tie up the loose ends and ensure no one knows it was an inside job. If this theory is true, it transforms the lax security from a plot hole into a brilliant piece of 4D chess. The Emperor wanted you to climb that anchor chain. He wanted the guards to fail. He sacrificed himself for the good of the Empire. But if we look strictly at the game as presented, without the fan theory glue, it is a catastrophic failure of logic. Commander Morrow, after destroying the Dark Brotherhood, should have been at maximum alert. He should have had the ship on lockdown. The fact that the Penitus Oculatus allows a lone swimmer to board and slaughter the Emperor is a stain on their record that makes the Blades look competent. Consider the gourmet quest earlier in the chain. You, the player, impersonate a famous orc chef, or whatever race you are, to poison the decoy Emperor. You are allowed into the kitchen of Castle Dower, a high-security military fortress, because you have a writ of passage. You're then allowed to cook a soup with special ingredients, including a giant's toe and a septim coin, and serve it directly to the Emperor. The food taster takes one spoon, doesn't die immediately, and they let the Emperor eat the rest. The level of incompetence required for this to work is staggering. The Penitus Oculatus apparently doesn't check the chef's pockets for poison. They don't have a healer on standby to cast Cure Poison. They don't question why the famous gourmet is wearing Daedric armour under his apron. The game relies on the Clark Kent effect. If you wear a chef's hat, no one recognises you as the Dragonborn who just killed a dragon outside the city gates. And let's not forget the geography of the Cataria's location. It is anchored in an inlet surrounded by cliffs. A determined archer on the shoreline could probably hit the deck. A mage with a fireball spell could set the sails alight. It is a tactical nightmare. Why isn't the ship out at sea? Why isn't it moving? It sits there like a duck in a barrel waiting to be shot. Even the loot on the ship points to a strange lack of preparation. In the Emperor's quarters, you find the gilded wrist guards, a unique item, and some fine clothes. But you don't find any powerful protective amulets. You don't find a scroll of divine intervention. The Emperor of Tamriel, the ruler of the known world, has less magical protection than a mid-level bandit chief. The death of Titus Mede II changes nothing in the world state. This is perhaps the biggest logical disconnect of all. You kill the Emperor, you walk out, you get paid, and the Legion still fights for the Empire. General Tullius doesn't seem to care. The Jarls don't mention it. Guards might have a throwaway line about the Emperor's murder, but the political landscape remains frozen. If the Emperor's death was part of a grand plan, either by Motier or Mede himself, it seems to have failed to trigger any significant shift. The Empire just shrugs and keeps going. It implies that the Emperor was so irrelevant that his assassination is treated with the same gravity as a mudcrab attack. So, we leave the Cataria, swimming back to shore with the Emperor's robes in our inventory and 20,000 gold in our pocket. We leave the Penitus Oculatus to explain to the Elder Council why they let a wet assassin walk onto the flagship. We look back at the ship bobbing gently in the water, and realise that the true enemy of the Empire wasn't the Stormcloaks or the Thalmor. It was their own inability to lock a door. But while the Emperor's security was practically non-existent, at least his guards were visible. We now turn our attention to a Daedric prince whose entire domain is shadows and theft, yet who runs her organisation with a business model that would bankrupt a lemonade stand. We speak of Nocturnal, the mistress of shadows, and her bizarre relationship with the Thieves' Guild. Leaving the salt spray of the Cataria and the baffling incompetence of the Emperor's bodyguards, we drift southeast. We trade the crisp, biting air of the Solitude coast for the damp, stagnating mist of the Rift. Here, the autumn leaves never quite seem to dry, and the city of Riften sits on the water like a wooden scab waiting to be picked off. Deep beneath this city, in the labyrinthine sewers known as the Ratway, lies the headquarters of the Thieves Guild, and it is here that we encounter a Daedric prince whose management style is frankly embarrassing. We are talking about Nocturnal, the Mistress of Shadows, the Lady Luck, the Urdra. She's one of the most powerful beings in the Orbis, a deity who predates the current Kalpa. Yet, her entire operation in Skyrim relies on a business model that makes a frantic skooma dealer look like a Fortune 500 CEO. The Thieves Guild storyline revolves around a central premise. The guild has fallen on hard times because their luck has run dry. Why? Because Mercer Frey, the guildmaster, betrayed his oath as a nightingale, broke into the Twilight Sepulchre and stole the skeleton key. This key is an artifact of immense power, capable of unlocking any physical door and metaphorically unlocking human potential. By removing it from the Ebonmere, the conduit to Nocturnal's realm, Mercer cut off the flow of luck to the guild. This brings us to the first glaring issue, Nocturnal's security protocol. The Twilight Sepulchre is Nocturnal's primary temple on Nirn. It houses the Ebonmere, a literal portal to her plane of oblivion, the Evergloam. To guard this cosmic back door, Nocturnal employs the Nightingales, a trinity of mortals sworn to serve her in life and in death. Core in-game fact: the Nightingales are chosen from the Thieves Guild, a group of people whose defining character trait is stealing things. Nocturnal, the goddess of thieves, hires thieves to guard her most precious possession from other thieves. It is the equivalent of hiring the Cookie Monster to guard the cookie jar, and being shocked when he eats the cookies. When Mercer Frey decides to steal the key, does he have to fight through legions of Dremora? Does he have to solve a riddle posed by the prince herself? No. He just walks in. He uses his Nightingale status to bypass the initial defences, picks a few locks, and takes the key. Nocturnal, an omniscient Daedric prince, apparently doesn't notice that her head of security is robbing her blind until he's already halfway to the exit. This leads to the curse. Once the key is gone, Nocturnal shuts off the luck. The guild suffers, jobs fail, members get arrested. But notice what Nocturnal doesn't do. She doesn't smite Mercer. She doesn't send her shadowy minions to retrieve the key. She doesn't manifest an avatar to slap him upside the head. She just sulks. She sits in her realm, arms crossed, waiting for someone else to fix the mess. Enter Karliah, the exiled Nightingale, and you, the new recruit who's been stealing candlesticks for about a week. Karliah explains the situation. To beat Mercer and restore the guild, you must become Nightingales. You must pledge your soul to Nocturnal. Here lies the absurdity of the contract. The terms of the deal are horrific. You agree to serve Nocturnal in life as a guardian of the Sepulchre, and in death, your spirit will remain in the Evergloam forever as a spectral sentinel until the contract is fulfilled, which, given the wording, seems to be effectively eternity. And what do you get in return? You get a suit of armour that looks like Batman cosplay, and the chance to use one of 3 powers once a day. You can turn invisible when sneaking, draw health from enemies, or make people fight each other. These are decent powers, but are they worth your eternal soul? Compare this to other Daedric princes. Molag Bal gives you a mace just for beating up a priest. Meridia gives you a sword for cleaning her temple. Sheogorath gives you the Wabbajack for hanging out in his mind. They don't ask for your soul. They just want you to cause chaos. Nocturnal demands you sign away your afterlife just for the privilege of cleaning up her security breach. It is arguably the worst trade deal in the history of Tamriel. You're doing her a favour by returning her property, and her payment is to enslave you forever. There is a tidbit found in the book The Nightingales which suggests that the Nightingales aren't just guards. They operate in the shadows to influence political and economic events in Nocturnal's favour. However, we never see this. In the game, the Nightingales are glorified janitors of the Sepulchre. You, Brynjolf and Karliah are the only active members. 3 people. 3 mortals are the only thing standing between the Daedric Prince of Shadow and total irrelevance on Nirn. Fans often debate whether the curse is even real. A popular fan theory suggests that the guild's bad luck is entirely psychosomatic, or the result of Mercer's mismanagement, stealing from the treasury, and Nocturnal is just taking credit for the misfortune to manipulate Karliah into signing the contract. Think about it. Does the Dragonborn feel unlucky before returning the key? No. You find gems in every urn. You critically hit dragons. You craft god-tier armor. Your luck is fine. The idea that you need Nocturnal's blessing to succeed is demonstrably false gameplay-wise. Yet, the narrative insists on it. You chase Mercer Frey to a Dwemer ruin where he is using the skeleton key to steal the eyes of the farmer. This is another layer of nonsense. Mercer has a key that can unlock human potential. He could use it to become a god, to rewrite reality, or to unlock the secrets of the universe. Instead, he uses it to rob a statue. It's like using a nuclear reactor to toast a bagel. His lack of ambition is staggering. When you finally kill Mercer, ironically by drowning him, which no lockpick can fix, you retrieve the skeleton key. At this point, you hold the most useful tool in the game. It is an unbreakable lockpick. Mechanically, it makes the lockpicking skill tree irrelevant. A rational player would keep the key, ignore the quest, and enjoy a life of easy theft. But the game demands you return it. You travel back to the Twilight Sepulchre to put the key back. You walk the Pilgrim's Path, a gauntlet of shadows and light. And here, the incompetence of Nocturnal's defences is highlighted again. The final obstacle is a drop down a well into the inner sanctum. Why was there a well? Who built this place? It feels less like a divine temple and more like an obstacle course designed by a bored architect. When you return the key, Nocturnal finally appears. She rises from the Ebonmere, towering and majestic. And what does she say? She essentially says, "Took you long enough. My business is business, now get back to work." She is the ultimate ungrateful boss. She treats the return of her artifacts and the pledging of your eternal soul as a standard Tuesday. There is a profound disconnect between Nocturnal's status as a major Daedric prince and her total reliance on a few mortal thieves. Other princes have armies of Dremora, Mehrunes Dagon, Golden Saints, Sheogorath, or Seekers, Hermaeus Mora. Nocturnal has ghosts, sad, shadowy ghosts of former thieves who failed. Consider the spectral sentinels you fight in the Twilight Sepulchre. These are the former Nightingales. They are sworn to protect the place, but because the key was stolen, they have gone mad and attack you. So, Nocturnal's backup security system is to have her own employees attack the people trying to help her. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. If you die there, you become one of them, a mindless shade attacking future pilgrims. This entire structure implies that Nocturnal doesn't actually care about efficiency. She cares about the aesthetic of mystery. She likes the idea of a secret society, mysterious oaths, and shadowy contracts more than she likes actual results. She is a micromanager who refuses to hire competent staff. The Thieves Guild questline ends with you becoming the guild master. You restore the guild to its former glory. But the luck you fought so hard to restore is never quantified. Do you get better loot? Marginally. Do guards ignore you more? Not really. The luck of the thieves is a narrative placebo. As you stand in the Ragged Flagon, looking at the cistern now filled with merchants and new recruits, you have to wonder about the deal you struck. You saved the guild, you killed the traitor, you returned the artifact, and in exchange, when you die, you don't get to go to Sovngarde with the heroes, you don't get to go to the far shores, you go to a dark, gloomy pocket dimension to stand guard over a rock for the rest of time. It is a sobering thought. The Dragonborn, champion of Akatosh, slayer of Alduin, is contractually obligated to spend eternity as a bouncer for a Daedric prince who couldn't be bothered to install a better lock on her front door. But speaking of pointless conflicts and contracts that don't make sense, we must now turn our eyes to the surface. While the thieves are busy selling their souls for better RNG, the armies of Skyrim are engaged in a war that defies all military logic. We move from the shadows of the Ratway to the battlefields of the Civil War, where strategy goes to die. We're about to discuss the infinite stalemate, where two massive armies have been fighting for months, yet have failed to capture a single foot of ground until a certain prisoner showed up. Leaving the dank sewers of Riften and the questionable management style of Daedric princes, we step out into the crisp air of the Skyrim wilderness. But the silence of the forest is deceptive. We are told, constantly, that this land is torn apart by civil war. Brother fighting brother, the Empire against the Stormcloaks. It is the backdrop of the entire game, the tension that fills every tavern and Jarl's court. Yet, if you stop to look at the map, specifically those tactical maps found in military camps with the little red and blue flags, you notice something peculiar. The flags never move. Until you, the random prisoner from Helgen, decide to intervene, the Great Civil War of Skyrim is essentially a staring contest. This brings us to the baffling reality of the infinite stalemate. Let's look at the board. Skyrim has 9 holds. At the start of the game, the Empire controls Solitude, Markarth, Morthal and Falkreath. The Stormcloaks hold Windhelm, Riften, Winterhold and the Pale. Whiterun sits in the middle, aggressively neutral. It is a perfect 4 versus 4 split. According to dialogue, High King Torrig was killed months ago. The war has been raging for quite some time. General Tullius has been in Skyrim for months. Ulfric has been rallying his troops since before the game started, and in all that time, neither side has managed to capture a single inch of territory from the other. It defies all military logic. We are meant to believe that 2 massive armies, led by experienced commanders, Tullius, a seasoned imperial general from Cyrodiil, and Ulfric, a veteran of the Great War, have achieved absolutely nothing. No forts have changed hands. No supply lines have been cut. No minor skirmishes have resulted in a shift of the front lines. The war is completely static. Consider the forts. Dotting the landscape are strategic fortifications like Fort Greymoor, Fort Sungard, and Fort Greenwall. In a real war, these would be the most contested locations. They would be filled with soldiers, siege engines, and patrols. In Skyrim, before you start the Civil War questline, most of these forts are occupied by bandits, or necromancers, or spiders. Think about that. The Empire and the Stormcloaks are so incompetent at waging war that they haven't even bothered to secure the primary defensive structures in their own territory. You can walk into Fort Greymoor, a stone's throw from Whiterun, and find a bandit chief sitting on the throne. Tullius complains about a lack of resources, but surely he has enough men to clear out a few squatters from a castle that controls the main road. This leads to the absurdity of the Jagged Crown. This is the first major mission for either side. The crown is a legendary symbol of office, said to grant legitimacy to the High King. Galmar Stonefist, Ulfric's second in command, tells you that they have located it in Corvan Jund. Legate Ricker, Tullius's second, says the same. They both know where it is, they both know it's crucial, so why did they wait for you? Galmar has presumably known about this location for weeks. Ricker has spies everywhere, yet the crown sits in a Draugr-infested ruin collecting dust until the Dragonborn walks in and says, "I'm ready to join up." Suddenly the entire war machine lurches into motion. It implies that without you, Galmar and Ricker would have just continued to stare at their maps, sighing heavily, forever. The War of Succession is paused until the protagonist presses start. The sheer reliance on the Dragonborn is comical. You are one person. You're not a general. You're not a tactician. You're a shock trooper. Yet both Tullius and Ulfric entrust you with the most critical missions immediately. Go take that fort, they say, and you do. Alone. You kill 50 soldiers, kill the commander and lower the flag. Then, and only then, do the reinforcements run in to stand around and say, "For Skyrim." This creates a scenario where the Dragonborn is the only competent soldier in the entire province. The thousands of other soldiers we see in the camps are essentially set dressing. They sharpen swords that never cut, cook stew that never finishes, and complain about arrows in knees. They are incapable of taking a fort without your direct supervision. Fans have long debated the season-unending quest, the Peace Council at High Hrothgar, as proof of this stalemate. In that quest, you negotiate a temporary truce so you can deal with Alduin. You sit down with Ulfric and Tullius and trade holds like playing cards. I'll give you Markarth if you give me Riften. The fact that they are willing to trade entire cities based on the whim of a monk and a dragon hunter shows how arbitrary their control really is. They treat the war like a board game because mechanically it is won. There is a law that attempts to explain this paralysis. It involves the concept of the prisoner. In Elder Scrolls metaphysics, the protagonist, the prisoner, is a cosmic anomaly, a being with the power to see the door in the Tower of Reality. They are agents of change in a world that is otherwise deterministic. The world cannot move forward without the prisoner. The war is static because fate itself is waiting for you to make a choice. The stagnation is a metaphysical state, not just bad AI. However, even if we accept the metaphysical explanation, the practical application is hilarious. Take the battle for Whiterun. This is the turning point of the war. Belgraf finally picks a side, usually the Empire unless you betray him. The Stormcloaks attack. Catapults fire fireballs over the walls, but look closer at the catapults. They are firing from where? The Stormcloaks don't have a siege camp set up until the battle starts, and the damage they do is purely cosmetic. A few roofs burn, some barricades break. But the moment the battle ends, the fires go out. The damage is repaired instantly in the next load screen mostly. The devastation of war is a temporary particle effect. And what about the Jarls? When you conquer a hold, the old Jarl is ousted. They go to the basement of the Blue Palace, if Imperial, or the Palace of the Kings, if Stormcloak, to sulk. They sit there, fully armoured, surrounded by their housecarls and families doing absolutely nothing. They don't plot a counterattack. They don't try to assassinate the new Jarl. They just exchange bitter dialogue lines. "You're a traitor," they say while eating bread. It is a house arrest so polite it borders on a tea party. The Infinite Stalemate also highlights the Thalmor's role, which we touched on earlier. The Thalmor dossier on Ulfric states that a long and drawn-out war is their goal. They want the Empire to bleed. So in a way, the stalemate is working as intended for the elves. But even the Thalmor must be bored. If the war is this static, no one is bleeding. Resources aren't being drained. They are being hoarded. The Empire isn't weakening. It's just waiting. Furthermore, consider the geography of the Pale Pass. This is the main road to Cyrodiil. Early in the game, an avalanche blocks it, according to dialogue, which prevents Tullius from getting reinforcements. This is a convenient plot device. But why doesn't the Empire just clear the avalanche? They have battle mages. They have giants. Well, they could hire them. They have explosives. A blocked road stops the might of the Imperial Legion for months. It seems the Empire's greatest weakness is a pile of snow. Or consider the Stormcloak Navy. They don't have one. They control Windhelm and Dawnstar, major ports, yet we never see a Stormcloak ship engaging an Imperial vessel. The waters are empty save for mud crabs and slaughterfish. For a rebellion based on Viking culture, their lack of naval presence is baffling. The Civil War questline feels like it was designed for a strategy game and then shoehorned into an RPG. The front lines are invisible. You can walk from Solitude to Windhelm without seeing a single battle. The war exists only in the dialogue of NPCs and the specific quests you trigger. It is a Schrödinger's war. It is both happening and not happening until you observe it. The climax of the war, killing Ulfric or Tullius, is equally anticlimactic. You storm the castle, kill the leader, and that's it. The surviving soldiers just stop fighting. Oh, the boss is dead? Guess we're done. There is no guerrilla warfare, no holdouts. The ideology of the rebellion or the loyalty to the Empire evaporates the moment the guy in the fancy chair stops breathing. It suggests that the entire conflict was never about ideals, but merely a cult of personality. As we stand in the throne room of Windhelm or Solitude, stepping over the body of a leader who spent the last 6 months looking at a map, we realise the truth. The Civil War wasn't a clash of civilizations. It was a waiting room for a Dragonborn to arrive and tidy up the mess so everyone could go back to their regularly scheduled programming of farming cabbages and complaining about the weather. The flags on the map finally change colour. The dialogue updates. But the world feels largely the same. The guards just wear different colours. But while the political leaders of Skyrim are paralysed by indecision, there is one family that has been proactive for thousands of years. Unfortunately, their proactivity involves locking their daughter in a crypt with an Elder Scroll, which might be the single worst parenting decision in the history of Tamriel. We travel now to Dimhollow Crypt, to awaken a vampire princess who has been napping through history, clutching a cosmic artifact that could blind the gods. Leaving behind the stalemated armies and their endless bickering over imaginary lines on a map, we venture into the shadows of the pale peaks south of Dawnstar. Here, hidden by snowdrifts and the biting wind, lies the entrance to Dimhollow Crypt. It is a dank, ancient place, smelling of stagnant water and old death, and deep within its bowels we find the centerpiece of the Dawnguard DLC, and perhaps the most baffling parental decision in the history of Tamriel. We are, of course, talking about Serana, the daughter of Coldharbour, and the Elder Scroll she's been backpacking with for a few thousand years. The setup is classic Gothic horror. You fight your way through vampires, deathhounds, and restless dead until you reach a large circular chamber. In the centre is a monolithic structure. You solve a puzzle involving purple fire and shoving a spike through your hand, standard vampire interior design, and the monolith opens. Out stumbles a woman. She's confused, groggy, and undeniably ancient. Strapped to her back is an Elder Scroll. Let's pause and appreciate the sheer absurdity of this storage solution. We learn that Serana was sealed away by her mother, Valerica, to protect her from her father, Lord Harkon. Harkon had discovered a prophecy called the Tyranny of the Sun, which required the blood of a daughter of Cold Harbour and an Elder Scroll to blot out the sun forever. Valerica, realizing that Harkon was insane and that blocking the sun would likely result in vampires starving to death, more on that later, decided to hide the two things Harkon needed most. Her brilliant plan? She put the key, Serana's blood, and the map, the Elder Scroll, inside the same box and buried it in a cave that her husband's minions clearly knew about. It is a security failure of monumental proportions. Imagine you have the launch codes for a nuclear weapon and the key to turn the switch. You want to keep them safe from a madman. Do you separate them? Do you throw the key in the ocean and hide the codes on the moon? No. According to Valerica's logic, you tape the codes to the key, put them in a Tupperware container and bury it in your backyard. If Harkon had decided to check Dimhollow Crypt at any point in the last few thousand years, which he eventually does, sending Vigilant Tolan and others to investigate, he would have won instantly. He would have found his daughter and the scroll in one convenient package. Valerica didn't scatter the pieces of the puzzle, she gift-wrapped them. And then there is the timeline. When Serana wakes up, she asks who the High King of Skyrim is. If you tell her Elisif or Ulfric, she's confused. Even if you mention the Empire, she asks, what Empire? This implies she's been asleep since before the Septim Empire, perhaps even before the Riemann Empire or the Alessian Empire. We're talking about the First Era, possibly early First Era. That is a nap spanning thousands of years. During all this time, she has been clutching an Elder Scroll. Here is where the lore comes into play. Elder Scrolls are not just books. They are fragments of creation, splinters of the Orbis itself. They exist outside of normal time and space. They hum with a cosmic resonance that can drive mortals mad just by being near them. The moth priests who train for decades to read them go blind and eventually insane. The Dwemer built massive city-sized machines just to read a single scroll without their heads exploding. Yet, Serana has been spooning one for 4,000 years. Physiologically and psychologically, she should be a wreck. The sheer radiation of Adric Creatia pouring off that scroll in a confined stone sarcophagus for millennia should have either dusted her or turned her into a gibbering oracle of pure madness. Instead, she wakes up a bit stiff, complains about the weather, and has a slightly sarcastic attitude about caves. She's remarkably well adjusted for someone who has been using a weapon of mass reality alteration as a pillow. This resilience points to a disconnect in how the game treats the scrolls. In the lore, they are terrifying. As unknowable artifacts. In gameplay, they are just quest items that weigh 20 pounds. Serana treats the scroll like a backpack she forgot to take off. She doesn't seem to feel its weight or its hum. It diminishes the awe of the artifact. If a vampire can sleep with one for an era with no side effects, maybe the moth priests are just being dramatic. Furthermore, consider the awakening. You, the Dragonborn, open the tomb. Serana doesn't know you. You're a stranger, heavily armed, smelling of sweat and dragon blood, yet she immediately trusts you to escort her home. Take me to my father, she says. Wait, her father? The man she was hiding from? Serana's motivation here is baffled. She knows her father is a maniac. She knows her mother locked her away to protect her from him. Yet, and her first instinct upon waking up is to go directly back to the lion's den, carrying the very object he needs to start the apocalypse. She essentially delivers herself and the super weapon to the villain's doorstep via a courier service, you. Fans have debated this heavily. The prevailing fan theory is that Serana suffered from memory loss or manipulation due to the long slumber. She remembers hating her parents fighting, but perhaps she doesn't remember the specifics of the prophecy until she gets back to Castle Volkihar and sees Harkon's obsession firsthand. Another theory suggests she assumes her father must be dead or changed after thousands of years. Surely he's gotten over that sun phase by now, she thinks. It's a level of optimism that borders on delusion. And let's look at the seal itself. The puzzle to open her sarcophagus involves moving braziers to match a pattern. It is a simple logic puzzle. It is not magical. It is not a blood seal. It is a mechanical lock. Any bandit with half a brain could have opened it. The fact that she remained undisturbed for thousands of years is a miracle of probability, not security. If a skeever had bumped into a brazier, the apocalypse might have started in the Second Era. Once you embark on the journey to Castle Volkihar, the absurdity continues. You take a boat from Icewater Jetty. You arrive at a massive Gothic castle on an island. It is imposing. It screams evil lair. You walk in with Serana. Lord Harkon is sitting at the head of a long table, feasting. He sees his daughter for the first time in millennia. Does he hug her? Does he weep? Does he ask how she is? No. He looks at the scroll on her back and says, "You have brought it." He's a caricature of a bad father, but his reaction highlights the flaw in Valerica's plan again. Harkon didn't even look for Serana, he just waited. He sat in his castle for thousands of years, drinking blood wine, assuming she would turn up eventually. And he was right. Valerica's desperate sacrifice to lock her daughter away achieved nothing but a delay. And because she packaged the scroll with the girl, the delay wasn't even strategically sound. If she had separated them, Harkon would have had Serana but no scroll. Now, thanks to you and Serana's poor judgment, he has both. The game tries to paint Valerica as a genius alchemist and a loving mother, but her actions are those of a panicked hoarder. She essentially played a game of hide and seek, where she hid in the first place the seeker would look, but relied on the seeker being too lazy to check the closet. And then there is the scroll itself, physically. Throughout the Dawnguard questline, the Elder Scroll, Sun, becomes a burden. You have to carry it. It weighs 20 units. You cannot drop it. You cannot sell it until the quest is over. It is a literal and figurative burden. But for Serana, it was a part of her outfit. The fact that she never tries to open it, never tries to read it, and never tries to use its power is strange. She is a powerful mage, a necromancer of high order. You would think, in the thousands of years of darkness, she might have peaked. But no, the seal is unbroken. Perhaps the most glaring plot hole is why Valerica didn't just take the scroll to the Soul Cairn with her. We learn later that Valerica fled to the Soul Cairn, a pocket dimension of the Ideal Masters, to hide. She took one scroll, the Blood Scroll, but left Serana with the other. Why split them up if the goal is to keep them from Harkon? By leaving Serana in Tamriel, she left her vulnerable to Harkon's hunters. If she had taken Serana and the scroll to the Soul Cairn, Harkon never would have found them. The Ideal Masters are tough landlords, but they are harder to breach than a puzzle-locked cave near Solitude. The decision to leave Serana behind feels like a contrivance to ensure the Dragonborn finds her. It sacrifices character logic for the sake of the damsel-in-a-box trope. Valerica, the protective mother, essentially abandoned her daughter in a stone coffin in a public dungeon, hoping for the best. As we leave Dim Hollow Crypt, squinting in the sudden sunlight that Serana is trying to block out with her hood, we have to marvel at the chain of events. A bad mother hid a worse father's weapon on her daughter's back, locked her in a cave with a kick me sign on the door, and waited for a prophecy fulfillment delivery service to arrive. And we, the players, are that service. We deliver the apocalypse to Harkon's door only to spend the next 20 hours trying to stop it. It's job security for a hero, I suppose. But while we are dealing with ancient prophecies and mismanagement of dangerous artifacts, there is another group of mages who claim to be the guardians of such things. They are the Psijic Order. And if you thought the College of Winterhold had low standards, wait until you see the inconsistencies in the Psijic's intervention policy. Leaving the damp, echoing chambers of Dim Hollow Crypt and the questionable parenting choices of the vampire elite, we return to the College of Winterhold. We've already discussed how easy it is to become the boss of this place, but now we must turn our gaze to the people who are supposedly pulling the strings from the shadows. They wear banana yellow robes, speak in riddles that would annoy a sphinx, and possess the ability to freeze time just to deliver a lecture. We are talking about the Psijic Order, the ancient monastic society based on the Isle of Artaeum, and their bafflingly inconsistent policy on saving the world. The Psijic Order is legendary. They are the masters of mysticism, the old ways. They predate the Mages Guild. They are so powerful that their island frequently vanishes from the face of Nirn just to avoid dealing with politics. In Skyrim, they make their grand return during the college questline. A monk named Quaranir appears to you inside the Hall of Elements. Quaranir freezes time, literally stops the world. The Archmage Sarvos Aren and the Thalmor agent Ancano are frozen mid-gesture. The particles of dust in the air hang suspended. Quaranir walks up to you and says, "We have not been in Skyrim for 100 years, but we are watching. The Eye of Magnus is dangerous. You must stop it." This establishes two things. First, the Psijics have godlike power. Stopping time is not a novice trick. It is high-level manipulation of the Orbis. Second, they monitor threats to the world and intervene when things get too spicy. So, here is the plot hole that you could fly a dragon through. Where were they for Alduin? We have established that Alduin, the World Eater, is back. He is resurrecting dragons. He is eating the souls of the dead in Sovngarde. His victory means the literal end of the current Kalpa, the end of time, space, and existence as we know it. This includes the Isle of Artaeum. If the world is eaten, the Psijics are eaten too. They live on Nirn, mostly. They are part of this reality. Yet throughout the entire main quest, the Psijic Order is completely silent. They do not freeze time to warn you about the dragons. They do not offer advice on Dragonrend. They do not send a single monk to High Hrothgar to consult with the Greybeards. They are seemingly content to let the apocalypse happen, provided it involves a dragon and not a glowing blue ball. Compare the threats. The Eye of Magnus is a powerful artifact, yes. It contains immense magicka. And Kano wants to use it to, well, his plan is vague, but presumably to unmake the world or give the Thalmor ultimate power. The Psijics see this and panic. They send an agent immediately. This object is too dangerous, they say. But Alduin is also trying to unmake the world. He is a fundamental force of destruction. Why is Ancano with a battery a code red emergency? But a literal dragon god eating reality a meh. Someone else will handle its situation. It implies a bizarre prioritization of threats. It's like a fire department ignoring a raging inferno engulfing the entire city to go rescue a cat stuck in a tree 3 blocks over. Sure, the cat, the eye, is important, but the city, the world, is burning down. There is a tidbit that attempts to rationalize this. The Psijic Order follows the old ways, a philosophy that emphasizes the spiritual force of change. They believe the 11 forces of change are sacred. Perhaps they view Alduin as a natural force. The end of the Kalpa is a natural part of the cosmic cycle. Maybe they don't intervene against Alduin because they believe he should win, or at least that it's not their place to stop a divine cycle. The Eye of Magnus, however, is an anomaly. It is a disruption of the natural order caused by mortals meddling with things they don't understand. Therefore, they intervene to correct the anomaly but step back for the apocalypse. If this is true, it makes them lawful neutral observers to the point of sociopathy. They are willing to watch billions die because it's natural, but will step in if a Nord mage touches a glowing orb because that's against the rules. But their intervention at the college is also hilariously inefficient. Quaranir freezes time to tell you to find the Augur of Dunlane. Why didn't he just tell Savos Aren? Savos is the Archmage. He is right there. He is frozen. Quaranir could have unfrozen him and said, "Hey Savos, that orb is a bomb. Bury it." Instead, he chooses the newest student, you, the guy who joined yesterday, to be his operative. It's that same reliance on the protagonist we saw with the Civil War, but elevated to a cosmic scale. And consider the climax of the questline. Ancano is channeling the Eye. Magical anomalies, floating wisps of aggressive energy, are spawning inside Winterhold. The barrier is up. Savos Aren is dead. Mirabel Irvine is dead. You fight your way in, kill Ancano and stop the reaction. Immediately 3 Psijic monks appear. They materialize out of thin air. Quaranir looks at the Eye and says, "We knew you would succeed, but the world is not ready for this. We are taking it." They surround the Eye, cast a spell, and teleport it away. Wait a minute. If they could teleport into the Hall of Elements and teleport the Eye out, why didn't they do that before Savos and Mirabel died? Why did they wait until the college was half destroyed and the leadership decapitated? They essentially used the college staff as meat shields to weaken Ancano so they could swoop in and steal the loot. It paints the Psijics not as benevolent guardians, but as cosmic repo men. They show up late, take the most valuable item in the room, offer no explanation, and leave you with the mess. Good job saving the world, they imply. We'll take this Class A artifact. You can keep the robes. Sorry about your friends. Fans have long debated whether the Psijics are actually good. A popular fan theory suggests that the Psijics are hoarding powerful artifacts on Artaeum to prevent anyone else from using them, not to protect the world, but to maintain their own supremacy. They took the eye because they wanted it. They didn't help with Alduin because Alduin doesn't have loot they can steal. It paints them as interdimensional kleptomaniacs with a superiority complex. There is also the matter of the Augur of Dunlane. He is a former student who ascended to a non-corporeal form. He lives in the midden dark beneath the college. He tells you that the Psijics have contacted him before. This implies a network of communication. Yet despite this network, the Psijics seem woefully uninformed about the daily goings-on. They know the Eye is active, but they don't seem to know Ancano is a Thalmor agent until it's too late. They have the power of omniscience when the plot requires it, and total ignorance when the plot needs a tragedy. The lack of interaction between the Psijics and the Greybeards is another missed opportunity. Both are ancient orders dedicated to understanding the cosmos. The Greybeards study the voice, the Psijics study the old ways. You would think they would have a hotline. When the sky opens up and dragons return, Arngir should be sending a courier to Artaeum saying, "Hey, are you seeing this?" But no, the Psijics exist in a vacuum. They are a deus ex machina that arrives to resolve the plot of a single questline because the writers wrote themselves into a corner. How do we get rid of this god-tier artifact so the player doesn't use it to conquer Tamriel? Oh, let's have the Yellow Monks take it. Their inconsistent meddling makes the world feel smaller. It reinforces the idea that Skyrim is a collection of isolated theme parks rather than a cohesive world. The Mage theme park has Psijics. The Dragon theme park has blades. They do not cross over. If you are fighting Alduin while wearing the Archmage robes, the Psijics don't pop in to say, "Nice robes, by the way. Maybe use that staff we let you keep. And let's not forget the Staff of Magnus." The Psijics send you to get it. They tell you it's the only thing that can stop the Eye. But they don't tell you where it is. You have to ask the Augur. If the Psijics are watching everything, surely they know the staff is in Labyrinthian. Why make you jump through hoops? It feels like they're testing you, treating a world-ending crisis as a final exam for a student they didn't even enroll. So, the Psijics vanish. They take the Eye of Magnus back to Artaeum, presumably to put it on a shelf next to all the other dangerous toys they've confiscated over the eras. They leave you, the newly appointed Archmage, to explain to the Jarl why half the town is frozen and why there are magical anomalies eating the local goats. You stand in the courtyard, watching the snowflakes fall where the monks used to be. Ooh, you realise that the most powerful wizards in existence are essentially absentee landlords who only show up to collect the rent when the house is on fire. But as we leave the high fantasy nonsense of the college, we descend into the gritty, dirt-stained reality of the Reach. Here, in the craggy hills of Markarth, we find a conspiracy that is less about magic and more about politics. But don't worry, it makes just as little sense. We're about to unravel the Forsworn Conspiracy, a plot so convoluted that even the people involved seem to have forgotten whose side they are on. We leave the lofty frozen peaks where monks hoard time and descend into the stone-carved, blood-soaked streets of Markarth. This is the city of stone and silver, built by the Dwemer, inhabited by Nords, and contested by the Reachmen. It is a place of hard edges and harder people. And here, beneath the waterfalls and the steaming metalworks, we find a political conspiracy so convoluted that it makes a skeever nest look organised. We are talking about the Forsworn Conspiracy, specifically the baffling alliance between the King in Rags and the Silverblood family. The setup is pure noir mystery. You arrive in Markarth. A man named Waylin pulls a shiv in the market and attacks a woman, shouting, "The Reach belongs to the Forsworn, the guards kill him." A man named Eltrus slips you a note. You start investigating. It feels gritty. It feels real. But the deeper you dig, the more the logic crumbles like bad masonry. You discover that Thona Silverblood, the patriarch of the most powerful and violently anti-Reachman family in the city, is actually controlling the Forsworn agents inside the walls. He has made a deal with Madanach, the King in Rags, who is imprisoned in Sidna Mine. Thonar uses Madanach's followers to assassinate his political rivals and seize land, and in exchange, he allows Madanach to run his court from inside the prison. This alliance makes absolutely no sense for either party. Let's look at Thonar first. The Silverbloods are Nord supremacists. They supported Ulfric Stormcloak during the Markarth incident, where he liberated the city from the Reachmen and executed them in the streets. Their entire identity is built on owning the Reach and mining its silver. By employing the Forsworn, fanatical terrorists who want to exterminate Nords and reclaim the Reach, Thonar is feeding the very beast that wants to eat him. He thinks he's using them as a tool, but he's essentially handing loaded crossbows to people who have sworn a blood oath to shoot him. It's not just risky, it's suicidal. Every assassination strengthens the Forsworn's grip on the city, undermining the very stability the Silverbloods rely on for profit. Now look at Madanach. He is the king in rags. He led the uprising. He's a legend among the Reachmen. He sits in Sidna Mine, writing orders that get smuggled out. He agrees to kill for Thonar. Why? To keep his people alive? He has an army in the hills. The Forsworn control half the Reach. Druadach Redoubt is filled with his soldiers. Why is the legendary leader of the rebellion content to sit in a jail cell and act as a hitman for his oppressor? If Madanach has the means to smuggle orders out and receive reports, surely he has the means to organise an escape. Spoiler, he does. He literally has a key to a back door in his pocket the entire time. He chooses to stay in prison for 20 years, murdering innocent Nords at Thonar's behest, rather than breaking out and leading the actual war. It portrays him not as a revolutionary genius, but as a comfortable collaborator who prefers the safety of a cell to the hardships of a camp. There is a law regarding the Markarth incident. The book The Bear of Markarth claims that the crimes attributed to Ulfric were actually committed by the Forsworn or exaggerated by the Empire. But it also highlights that the Forsworn are decentralized. They are tribes. Madanach is a figurehead. By keeping him alive and in control, Thonar might think he's preventing a more chaotic leader from rising. But the Forsworn in the wild attack everyone on sight, including Silverblood caravans, so Madanach's control is tenuous at best. Thonar is paying for a protection racket that doesn't even protect him. The absurdity peaks when you are framed for the murder of Eltrys. The guards throw you into Sidna Mine. No one escapes Sidna Mine, they say, except apparently the king in rags who can leave whenever he feels like it. Inside, you meet Madanach. He gives you a shiv and tells you to kill a snitch. If you do, he invites you to escape with him. He leads you through a Dwemer tunnel that opens right into the middle of the city. Think about this. The highest security prison in Skyrim, designed to hold the most dangerous political prisoner in the province, has a back door that leads directly into the residential district, and the Silverbloods, who own the mine, apparently forgot it was there. Or they knew, and just hoped Madanach wouldn't use it. When you escape with the Forsworn, they burst out into the streets of Markarth. They kill Thonar sometimes, and a bunch of guards. Then they run out of the city gates and disappear. They go to Druadach Redoubt and sit there. The impact on the world state is zero. If the king in rags escapes, the Forsworn attacks in the Reach do not increase. The Civil War doesn't shift. The Jarl doesn't declare martial law. Markarth goes back to normal instantly. You can even walk back into the city. And the guards, who just framed you for murder, will say, "You've been pardoned." Pardoned? You just aided a jailbreak of a terrorist leader and participated in a street brawl that left half the city watch dead. The Jarl grants you a pardon because Thonar was the bad guy. It is a handwave of massive proportions. The political fallout of the king in rags escaping should be catastrophic. It should trigger a new war for the Reach. Instead, it's treated as a completed side quest. And if you kill Madanach in the mine, you walk out and Thonar is waiting for you. He gives you a ring, the Silverblood family ring. "You've done us a great service," he says. He just admitted to a massive conspiracy involving murder and treason, and he pays you off with a piece of jewellery with a mediocre enchantment. He trusts you, a stranger who was just investigating him, to keep quiet. Fans often debate whether this questline was cut content. It feels truncated. The conspiracy is less of a web and more of a straight line that ends in a cliff. The complexity of the Reachmen culture, their old gods, their hatred of the Nords, their legitimate claim to the land, is boiled down to a jailbreak sequence. Even the dialogue highlights the nonsense. Madanach gives a speech about how the Nords steal their land. "We are the true sons of Skyrim," he yells. Wait, no, that's the Stormcloaks. He yells, "The Reach belongs to the Forsworn." Yet he spent decades killing the Nords' enemies, other landowners, for the Nords. He was the most effective gentrification agent the Silverbloods ever had. So we leave Markarth, washing the silver dust from our boots. We leave the king in rags to his cave and the Silverbloods to their counting houses. We realise that in the Reach, conspiracy is just a fancy word for everyone is an idiot. But as we travel back to the Rift, we find that idiocy isn't exclusive to politics. Sometimes it infects the greatest criminal minds of the era. We return to the Thieves' Guild to discuss Mercer Frey, a man who possessed the ultimate lockpick and used it to steal, well, giant glass eyeballs. We return to the shadows of the rift, but this time our focus is not on the Daedric Prince of Luck, but on the man who stole it, Mercer Frey, the guild master of the Thieves Guild, a man so skilled he can pick a lock that doesn't exist, yet so blind he can't see the obvious plot hole he's standing in. We are talking about the Thalmor I Oversight. Mercer Frey is the villain of the Thieves Guild questline. We learn that for 25 years he has possessed the skeleton key of Nocturnal. This is a Daedric artifact that unlocks any barrier, physical, magical, or even metaphorical. With this key, the wielder can open portals to other dimensions, unlock hidden potential within themselves, and bypass any security measure ever devised. So, what does the greatest thief in Skyrim, armed with the ultimate tool of theft, decide to steal for his retirement plan? The crown jewels of the Emperor? The secret to immortality from a black book? The entire treasury of the East Empire Company? Number. He decides to steal the eyes of the Thalmor. Core in-game fact: the eyes of the Thalmor are two massive gemstones, reportedly the size of a human head, located deep within the Dwemer ruin of Erkenthand. They are set into a massive statue of a snow elf traitor. They are valuable, certainly. Delvin Mallory estimates they are worth a fortune, but stealing them requires navigating a collapsing ruin infested with Thalmor, avoiding Dwemer centurions, and climbing a giant statue while the room fills with water. Why? Mercer Frey has the skeleton key. He can walk into the Imperial City Palace, unlock the Emperor's personal vault, take a bag of diamonds, and walk out. He can unlock the chests of every Jarl in Skyrim in a single night. He could probably unlock the door to a secure retirement home in High Rock and live like a king. Instead, he chooses a heist that involves splunking into a hole filled with blind, poisonous goblin elves to steal two rocks that are notoriously difficult to fence. Think about the logistics. The eyes are huge, they are unique items. Trying to sell the eyes of the Thalmor is like trying to pawn the Mona Lisa. Every guard, fence and collector in Tamriel would know they are stolen. Mercer is a master thief. He should know that liquidity is king. Cash is better than a giant cursed gemstone that screams, "I robbed a temple." And then there is the curse. Throughout the questline, Mercer mocks the idea of the curse of the Thieves Guild. He claims bad luck is just an excuse for incompetence. "I make my own luck," he says, sneering, but look at his situation. He has been stealing from the guild chest for years. He killed Gallus. He framed Carlia. He has been getting away with it because of the skeleton key. But the moment he decides to go for the eyes, everything falls apart. He fails to kill you in Snowvale Sanctum, leaving you alive to hunt him. He leaves a trail a mile wide, and he chooses a target, the Thalmor, who are historically associated with betrayal and tragedy. The lore here involves the statue itself. The statue in Erkenthand depicts a snow elf being blinded by the Dwemer. It represents the moment the Thalmor were betrayed and enslaved. It is a monument to the ultimate loss of sight. Mercer Frey, a man blinded by his own arrogance, is stealing the eyes from a statue representing blindness. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a glass dagger. But Mercer, the mastermind, misses it completely. Furthermore, he brings you into the fold. He brings the Dragonborn to Snowvale Sanctum to help him. Why? He has the key. He doesn't need help opening the door. He claims he needs a partner to handle the Draugr, but we see him one-shot Draugr Deathlords later. He brings you along solely to betray you, which creates the witness that eventually destroys him. If he had just gone alone, he would have succeeded. His need for a dramatic betrayal is his undoing. And let's talk about the final confrontation. You catch him in the sanctuary of the statue. He's prying the eyes out. The room starts filling with water. He fights you, and he uses the skeleton key to turn invisible and teleport. Wait, he can turn invisible and teleport. If he can do that, why is he fighting you at all? He should just grab the gems, turn invisible, unlock the exit or a portal, and leave. He stands and fights 3 nightingales, you, Brynjolf and Carlia, to the death when he has the ultimate escape tool in his pocket. It defies the first rule of thievery: don't get caught. He engages in a boss battle instead of a vanish act. Fans have long debated Mercer's mental state. A fan theory suggests that the skeleton key itself drove him mad. It is a Daedric artifact after all. Perhaps Nocturnal was subtly influencing him, pushing him toward more and more irrational risks until he inevitably self-destructed. The key unlocks potential, but maybe it also unlocks hubris. It made him believe he was invincible, blinding him to the obvious trap of his own ego. But even if he is mad, the plan to steal the eyes is just inefficient. The Thalmor are dangerous. They have unparalleled hearing. Mercer is a stealth specialist, but sneaking past hundreds of Thalmor in a confined cave is high risk. Why not steal from humans? Humans are deaf and blind compared to Thalmor. He chose the hardest difficulty setting for his final heist, for no reason other than the writers wanted a cool set piece with a giant statue. And what happens to the eyes? You recover them. You can sell one to Delphine Mallory for a paltry sum compared to their legendary value. The other one? It sits in your inventory or on a shelf in your house. The ultimate prize that Mercer died for becomes a paperweight. Mercer Frey represents the failure of the mastermind trope in Skyrim. We are told he is a genius. We are told he is miles ahead of everyone. But his actions are those of a desperate, greedy amateur who found a magic tool and didn't know when to cash out. He died in a flooded basement fighting a demigod over 2 big rocks he couldn't even carry comfortably. As we loot the skeleton key from his corpse and watch the water rise, we have to shake our heads. He could have unlocked the world. Instead, he just unlocked his own watery grave. But while Mercer Frey was busy mismanaging his soul, the Dragonborn has been busy selling theirs. In fact, if you look at the Dragonborn's spiritual portfolio, it looks less like a devout follower and more like a metaphysical Ponzi scheme. We now turn to the traffic jam waiting in the afterlife. We emerge from the flooded ruins of Erkenthand, shaking the water from our armour and the disbelief from our minds. We have defeated Mercer Frey. We have served Nocturnal. We are a nightingale, sworn to guard the Twilight Sepulchre in death. But wait, aren't we also the listener of the Dark Brotherhood sworn to Sithis? And didn't we drink the blood of the beast to become a werewolf, pledging our soul to Hircine? And aren't we the Dragonborn claiming our place in Sovngarde? This brings us to the metaphysical headache known as the Dragonborn's many afterlife pacts. In any other fantasy universe, selling your soul is a one-time transaction. It is a binding contract signed in blood. You give your eternal essence to a demon or a god, and in exchange you get power. But in Skyrim, the Dragonborn treats soul-binding contracts like terms of service agreements on a new app. They scroll to the bottom and click "I agree" without reading a word. Let's look at the roster of claimants. First, there is Nocturnal. As we discussed, becoming a nightingale binds you to the Evergloam. You're contractually obligated to serve her as a ghost. Second, there is Hircine. If you become a werewolf, part of the companion's questline, your soul belongs to the hunting grounds. You're destined to hunt forever in his realm. Even if you cure yourself, the game lets you reinfect yourself. Third, there is Sithis and the Void. As the listener, you serve the Dread Father. While not a Daedric prince in the traditional sense, the Dark Brotherhood emphasizes that you belong to the Void. Fourth, there is Molag Bal. If you accept Harkon's gift or Serana's bite to become a vampire lord, you're pledging yourself to the Lord of Domination. Your soul is marked for Cold Harbour. Fifth, there is Hermaeus Mora. Throughout the Dragonborn DLC, Mora claims you. He calls you his champion. He kills Storn Craigstrider to get to you. He implies heavily that you are replacing Miraak as his eternal servant in Apocrypha. Sixth, there is Shor and Sovngarde. As a Nord hero, or an honorary one, and specifically as the Slayer of Alduin, you are welcomed in the Hall of Valor. Zun tells you that your place is reserved. And finally there is Akatosh. You are Dragonborn. Your soul is a dragon soul. It is a fragment of the Time God himself. The game allows you to be all of these things simultaneously. You can be a Vampire Lord Nightingale listener who killed Alduin. You can have every Daedric artifact and be the champion of every prince. So what happens when you die? The absurdity of this situation paints a picture of a divine lawsuit of epic proportions. Imagine the Dragonborn dying. Their soul leaves their body. Immediately Hircine shows up with a leash. Nocturnal shows up with a contract. Molag Bal shows up with a mace. Shor opens the gates of Sovngarde, and Akatosh looms overhead. Who wins? There is a prevailing fan theory that Akatosh has dibs. Because your soul is fundamentally a dragon soul, an Eke shard, it returns to the oversoul of Akatosh regardless of your mortal dealings. The Daedric princes are essentially getting scammed. They think they own you, but they only own the mortal influence, not the core divine spark. You're selling them a timeshare in a building that Akatosh owns the deed to. However, Another theory suggests a traffic jam or a bidding war. Perhaps the Dragonborn becomes a new minor deity simply because so much divine energy is concentrated in one being that no single realm can contain them. Or, more cynically, perhaps the princes just fight over you forever, tearing your soul apart. There is a law regarding the dreaming sleeve. In some deep lore metaphysics, souls that aren't claimed go to the dreaming sleeve to be recycled. But the Dragonborn is too heavy with destiny for that. The heroes of prophecy, the prisoners, often disappear or transcend. The Nerevarine went to Akavir. The champion of Cyrodiil became Sheogorath. Perhaps the Dragonborn's fate is to simply vanish, leaving the princes holding empty contracts. But the game never addresses this. You can stand in front of Tsun in Sovngarde while wearing nightingale armour and holding Molag Bal's mace, and he says, "Welcome, Dragonborn." He doesn't say, "Hey, I see you have a stamp on your hand from Hircine's club, you can't come in." The Aedra and Daedra seem to have a don't ask, don't tell policy regarding your spiritual promiscuity. Consider the interaction with sworn enemies. Molag Bal and Boethia hate each other, yet you can be the champion of both. Meridia hates the undead, yet you can wield Dawnbreaker while being a vampire. The princes, who are supposed to be jealous, possessive and omniscient, seem to have no idea that you're cheating on them with their siblings. It reduces the gravity of these pacts. In literature, a pact with the devil is the central conflict. In Skyrim, it's a checkbox for an achievement. Sold soul to Clavicus Vile, check, got the mask, next. It trivializes the concept of eternal damnation. The funniest implication is the sheer awkwardness of the Dragonborn's existence. You're walking around carrying the favour of 16 different deities who all hate each other. You are a walking divine conflict of interest. If they ever compared notes, you would be smited instantly. As you look at your quest log filled with Daedric quests completed, you have to laugh. You have promised your afterlife to everyone, which means, effectively, you have promised it to no one. When the Dragonborn finally kicks the bucket, the bureaucracy in Oblivion is going to be a nightmare. But while the Dragonborn is busy collecting curses like Pokemon cards, Lord Harkon is busy plotting a curse that would end his own existence. We return to the vampire plot to discuss a plan so scientifically flawed, it makes flat earthers look like astrophysicists. We leave the metaphysical courtroom of the afterlife and return to the gloomy, fog-shrouded island of Castle Volkihar. Here sits Lord Harkon, an ancient vampire, a powerful mage, and a man who seemingly skipped every biology class he ever had the opportunity to attend. His master plan, the driving force of the Dawnguard DLC, is the tyranny of the sun. He wants to use Oriel's bow and the blood of a daughter of Coldharbour to blot out the sun forever. His reasoning is simple. The sun hurts vampires. If the sun is gone, vampires can rule the world. There is just one small, catastrophic problem with this logic: the food chain. We are talking about Harkon's sun-blocking strategy, a plan that is essentially a suicide pact with extra steps. Let's break down the ecosystem of Nirn. The sun provides light and heat. Plants need sunlight to grow, photosynthesis. Herbivores, deer, cows, rabbits, eat plants. Humans and elves, Nords, Imperials, etc., eat plants and herbivores. Vampires eat humans and elves. If Harkon succeeds and permanently blots out the sun, the plants die within weeks. The temperature plummets, turning Skyrim into an even deeper frozen wasteland, Atmora 2.0. The herbivores starve and freeze, the livestock dies. The humans, facing famine and extreme cold, die off in massive numbers, and then, the vampires, having destroyed their only food source, starve to death. Vampires in Skyrim need blood. While they don't die instantly without it, they just get weaker and more feral in gameplay or stronger but hated depending on the version. Lore-wise, a vampire needs fresh blood to maintain their sanity and power. They are parasites. A parasite that kills its host population is a failed parasite. Harkon's plan is the equivalent of a lion deciding to burn down the savannah because the grass tickles his belly. Sure, the grass is gone, but now all the zebras are dead, and the lion is going to look very foolish shortly before he starves. Serana, Harkon's own daughter, actually points this out. In a rare moment of lucidity for an NPC, she tells you, if we blot out the sun, the mortals will die. If the mortals die, we have nothing to feed on. She explicitly acknowledges the flaw in the plan. Yet, Harkon refuses to listen. He's so obsessed with the prophecy that he ignores the basic survival needs of his species. This leads to the question, is Harkon stupid or is he insane? A popular fan theory suggests that Harkon is being manipulated by Molag Bal. Molag Bal is the Prince of Domination and the creator of vampires. He thrives on suffering and death. Perhaps Bal wants Harkon to blot out the sun, not to help vampires, but to cause a mass extinction event on Nirn. Harkon thinks he's building a vampire empire. Molag Bal knows he's building a graveyard. Harkon is just a useful idiot. Another theory is that Harkon believes he can farm humans. Maybe he envisions a Matrix-style future where humans are kept in pens, fed something, mushrooms, subterranean fungus, and bled for the vampire aristocracy. But we see absolutely no infrastructure for this in Castle Volkihar. They have a few cattle in the dungeon, sure, but not enough to sustain a population. Harkon has no agricultural plan, he has no human preservation committee. He just wants to shoot the sun and see what happens. Yet furthermore, consider the military retaliation. If the sun goes black, every other force on Nirn is going to unite against the vampires. The Thalmor, the Empire, the Stormcloaks, the Psijic Order, and probably the other Daedric princes, Meridia would be furious, would descend on Castle Volkihar. Harkon thinks blocking the sun will make him a king. In reality, it would make him the #1 target in the multiverse. He would unite the world against him in a way Alduin failed to do. Mechanically, when you use the bow to blot out the sun, using blood-cursed arrows, the effect lasts for 1 day. The game shows us the result, a creepy red sky. But the NPCs barely react. Life goes on. Harkon's eternal night might just be a cosmetic filter that annoys the farmers, but doesn't actually end the world. But if we take the prophecy literally, it is permanent darkness. The sheer short-sightedness of the plan makes Harkon a difficult villain to respect. He isn't a complex antagonist with a point. He's a madman with a very specific self-destructive fixation. He sacrifices his family, his wife, and his own safety for a goal that would ultimately kill him. It's also worth noting the irony of using Auriel's bow. Auriel is the elven version of Akatosh, the sun god. Harkon is using the sun god's weapon to kill the sun. It's a nice thematic twist, but the logistics remain garbage. So we kill Harkon, we stop the prophecy, we save the sun, and by doing so, we save the vampires from themselves. We are the best thing that ever happened to the Volkihar clan, because we prevented their leader from starving them all to death in a frozen, sunless apocalypse. We leave the castle, the sun shining brightly on the water, and we appreciate the warmth. But as we walk back to civilization, we commit a minor infraction. We accidentally steal a sweet roll, and suddenly we realise that while the vampires are blind to logic, the guards of Skyrim are not. In fact, they see everything. We arrive at our final destination, the psychic, omniscient hive mind of the Skyrim city guard. We have travelled from the execution block of Helgen to the soul snare of the Soul Cairn. We have mocked Daedric princes, questioned the geography of war, and dismantled the logic of vampire economics. But we end our journey with the most terrifying force in Skyrim. Not dragons, not Draugr, but the Hold Guard. Specifically, the Guard's psychic crime detection network. You know the feeling. You're alone in the wilderness. You are miles from the nearest settlement. You see a chicken, a humble river chicken. You decide, for reasons known only to the chaotic evil voice in your head, to shoot it. No one is around. The stealth eye is closed. You loose the arrow. The chicken dies. Immediately a text appears in the top corner of your vision. 40 bounty added to Whiterun. How? How does the Jarl of Whiterun, sitting on his throne 10 miles away, know that you just committed poultricide in the middle of a forest? Did the chicken scream in a frequency only guards can hear? Did the trees whisper your name? The bounty system in Skyrim is instantaneous and hold-wide. If a witness sees you commit a crime, the bounty is added immediately. If you kill the witness quickly enough, 0 witnesses remaining, the bounty is removed. This mechanic is meant to simulate witnesses reporting crimes. But the definition of witness is where the logic dissolves. In the early days of Skyrim, and still occasionally depending on your mod list or patch version, animals counted as witnesses. A horse could see you steal a sweet roll and apparently trot to the nearest barracks to file a police report. "Nay," says the horse, "he stole it." "I saw him," and the guard nods, writing it down. But even with human witnesses, the speed of information transfer violates the laws of physics. Skyrim has no telephones, no internet, no widespread telepathy. If you murder a hunter in the Mountains of the Reach and he shouts for help before dying, how does the guard in Markarth know instantly? In a realistic world, that witness would have to run to town, find a guard and describe you. This would take hours, maybe days. You should have a grace period to flee the hold. Instead, the moment the crime is registered, every guard in the hold knows your face. You can fast travel to the city gates immediately after the crime, and the guard will stop you. Wait, I know you. It implies a hive mind. The guards are not individuals. They're a collective consciousness linked by a neural network of justice. They share memories. One guard sees a crime, and they all see it. They are the Borg in chainmail. And let's talk about the stop right there criminal scum dialogue range. You can be sneaking on a rooftop, hidden in the shadows, and a guard on the ground will look up and initiate dialogue. Their perception checks are god tier. They can detect a stolen sweet roll in your pocket simply by looking at you. Let me guess. Someone stole your sweet roll? No, I stole it. And somehow you know. The absurdity is heightened by the Thane defense. You commit a murder. The psychic guards catch you. You say, I am the Thane of this hold. The guard says, oh, forgive me, Thane. I didn't realize it was you. Wait, you just murdered someone in broad daylight. But because you have a fancy title, the guard just lets you go. I'll look the other way this time. It paints a picture of corruption so deep it's practically a game mechanic. The laws of Skyrim are absolute, unless you are friends with the Jarl, in which case murder is just a boys will be boys moment. There is a popular fan theory that the guards are actually the most powerful beings in the game. They scale with the player to a degree. They have infinite reinforcements, they have psychic knowledge, and they have the arrow in the knee backstory implying they were all adventurers once. Perhaps they are a clone army, created by Tiber Septim to police the Empire, linked by an ancient enchantment. It explains why they all have the same voice and say the same lines. And consider the combat state. If you fight a dragon inside a city, the guards are brave. They charge in with steel arrows. But if you accidentally hit a guard while fighting the dragon, the entire city turns on you. The dragon is literally burning down their homes, but you grazed Officer Jenkins' knee, so you are the priority target. The threat assessment logic is broken. Sure, the World Eater is here, but that guy just committed assault. Get him. It creates a world where the law is more feared than the apocalypse. Players will reload a save file not because they died to a boss, but because they accidentally stole an apple and don't want to deal with the psychic bounty hunters. So, as we stand over the body of the chicken, watching the guard run towards us from 3 miles away, we realise the truth. Skyrim isn't ruled by the Empire. It isn't ruled by the Stormcloaks. It is ruled by the omniscient order of the Guard. They see all, they know all, and they really, really care about livestock. And so, fellow adventurers, we come to the end of our chronicle. We have traversed the frozen tundra, climbed the highest peaks, and delved into the darkest crypts. We have pulled at the loose threads of this tapestry until the whole thing threatened to unravel. We have seen that the mighty heroes are often incompetent, the terrifying villains are often confused, and the laws of the universe are more like gentle suggestions than hard rules. From the geographical impossibility of your capture to the psychic network of the City Watch, Skyrim is a world built on the rule of cool rather than the rule of logic. It is a place where you can be the master of everything and the leader of nothing. A place where saving the world takes a backseat to delivering a letter. A place where the apocalypse waits patiently for you to finish crafting iron daggers. But perhaps that is the charm. If Skyrim made perfect sense, if the armies fought logically, if the villains were efficient, if the guards needed radios, it wouldn't be the world we fell in love with. The absurdity is part of the magic. It gives us space to laugh, to meme, and to tell stories like this one. It reminds us that this is a game, a playground of imagination where the cracks in the walls let the light shine through. So the next time you see a dragon flying backwards or a mammoth falling from the sky, or a guard arresting you for killing a witness that didn't exist, don't get angry. Just smile, take a deep breath of that mountain air, and remember that you are the Dragonborn, and in this chaotic, nonsensical, beautiful mess of a world, you are the only thing that matters. Thank you for journeying with me tonight. I hope the road was entertaining even if it was a bit bumpy. Sweet dreams.